Rhaenys is his eldest daughter. Lannister bitch. Maegil is a princess, my love. She is expected to be married one day, said Rhaegar. But to a northern savage. And you would have had another marry Jaehaerys. Your heir and our future king. You would have had his queen be a barbarian of the north. The son and daughter of traitors, married to the son and daughter of the king and queen, she spat. It's the only reason why Dorne joined the Seven Kingdoms in the end, through royal marriages with House Martell, Jon thought with raised brows at Cersea's statement. It annoyed Jon to no end how Cersei had raised Jaehaerys and how she had let him do whatever he liked. Jon was horrified by what he had done when he had skinned a cat, heavy with unborn kittens, and presented it to Rhaegar. And he hadn't failed to notice how giddy with excitement whenever there was an execution or watching someone being taken to the Black Cells. And this is the perfect prince she wants to inherit the throne. I'd sooner arrange an accident on him and let Tyrese take the throne whilst blaming the deed on the Northerners. But, in spite of what he is still Rhaegar's son. Cersei. There is going to be no marriage, said Rhaegar, whom looked exhausted already from Cersei's ranting. You've changed your mind, she demanded, calming down. No. The Starks made the decision for us. It would seem that Prince Tridane of the North is already married and Princess Lyanna is already betrothed to another. And even then, Eddard Stark had sent a scathing and uncouth letter, Rhaegar explained. That's putting it lightly. At this rate, the only way we shall achieve a fully united Westeros into one united country, is through an invasion. Though that may be unwise, for many of the Bannermen still remember the failure of the last time. As do I. And as much as Eddard Stark must die for betraying Rhaegar as he has done, he has undoubtedly been planning on how to fight us should we attack again. But, my king and queen, there is a matter that needs to be addressed, said Jon. And what is that, Connington? Asked Cersei, whom was standing whilst Rhaegar had sat back down, as though trying to prove that she was the greatest power in the room. If not Lyanna Stark, whom will be Jaehaerys' queen? Asked Jon. Maegil should be wed to Jaehaerys. Just as the Targaryens of old had done, said Cersei instantly. Jon was disgusted. That was to keep the bloodlines pure, your grace, Jon replied. And the bloodline isn't pure, is it? You would have half Lannister and half Targaryen rule forever, wouldn't you? Also, your grace, we've only seen how that can sow chaos into the royal family. It would be best, for the royal family as well as for the realm, if a suitable bride can be selected from a noble family. Perhaps, in the prince's name, a Daytoni, said Jon. Cersei looked to Rhaegar for support for her suggestion. The hand says it right. We must show the realm that we are fully committed to the realm and to making greater alliances with the other houses. Especially those whom have always been loyal to House Targaryen, said Rhaegar before turning to Jon. Whom do you think would be best, Jon? Asked Rhaegar. I would think that there are two possible candidates, your grace. The Lady Desmara of House Redwyne as one. And the other, the Lady Margaery of House Tyrell, said Jon. Personally, I think that Margaery Tyrell would be the best. House Tyrell are up-jumped stewards and are unworthy to wed into House Targaryen. And the Rose of Highgarden is a whore, unfit to marry my son. And her father is an idiot who lost thousands of men in battle to the Northerners. Cersei snapped. As did your father, Lannister bitch. Your father lost less than 8,000 men to the Northerners. But Mace Tyrell did at least fight in Robert's rebellion, whilst your lord father was noticeably absent for much of the fighting and only appeared when Rhaegar had sent his offer to him, Jon thought, but fought hard to keep it to himself. Margaery Tyrell does seem to be a good choice, said Rhaegar with a nod. Have you not listened to what I said, my love? Margaery Tyrell is not worthy to wed a son of House Targaryen and House Lannister, she almost shrieked. One would think from the way you spoke of House Lannister, that House Lannister produces gods and not mere mortals. Cersei, we need the Tyrells of the Reach. If we are to bring the North back into the royal fold, we need the armies of the Reach, their food and their gold. We underestimated the Northerners in the last war, a mistake I have no intention of repeating. And if we are to emerge victorious, we must be allied to the Reach and have all of their armies on side, said Rhaegar. Thinking about the North brought back the memories of the rebellion and when Jon's attempted attack on the Northerners as they had ambushed them. Gods, what was I thinking? John wondered as the images returned to his head of thousands of men of the Stormlands and the Crownlands were cut down or shot by the Northerners, and he finally called off the attack when his cousin's son, Ronit, was wounded by 2 arrow wounds. We underestimated the Northerners in that war. We cannot do so again. It's a good thing that Roriger sent Viserys and Daenerys to find allies in Essos. We will need all of the help we can get if we are to take the north. Eddard 14. Speaking with his children in his solar, Eddard felt proud of their decisions. All, but Arya, had agreed to marry or be awarded a holding. Halrik was to be Lord of Moat Cailin and Artos was to become Lord of Wolf's Den. And the rest were to marry, either patrilineally or matrilineally. Elyanna was to marry Harry on Karstark of Karhold. Ulrich was to matrilineally wed Daisy Mormont of Bear Island. Rickon was to matrilineally wed Winifred Marndaly of White Harbour. Deanna was to marry Domeric Bolton of the Dread Fort. Serena was to marry Brandon Dustin of Barrowton. Eddard and Ashura had decided that they would wait until the wedding feasts in Winterfell to discuss amongst the bannermen whom should wed Halrik and Artos. I am proud of you all, to make these decisions. I know that it won't be easy and that you will be somewhere that won't be home, said Eddard. Father, we are all proud to our duty to House Stark and to the north. And marrying Harry on is what I want, said Elyanna with a smile. Eddard and Ash beamed at their children. Very well, I shall write the ravens to send to the respective lords, said Eddard. They all had left for their chambers, all talking about what was soon to happen. Arya, stay, said Ash. Arya walked back to her chair. I know that you do not wish to wed at the moment. But you must decide what it is that you want to do, said Ash. I want to be a warrior, mother. I don't want to be a perfect little princess or lady like Elyanna or Serena. I want to be a warrior like Deanna, said Arya. At least she isn't becoming too wild or reckless like Lyanna, was all Eddard could think. Perhaps, then, would you wish to be fostered for a year or so at Bear Island? I am sure that House Mormont would gladly welcome you and teach you to be a great warrior like all Mormont women from the past and to this day, said Ash. Yes. Yes, mother, said Arya excitedly. Very good, I am sure that they will be glad to welcome you. I will write to Jorah Mormont. And until then, you are to attend your lessons and study well. You may wish to be a warrior, but all capable warriors should know their lessons, said Ash. Yes, mother, said Arya, with a hint of annoyance and boredom. But what about Deanna? She is a warrior also, asked Arya. Aye, she is a warrior. But she is aware of her duty as a Stark and she does love her intended groom, Domeric Bolton, said Eddard. And one day, you may change your mind and wish to marry, in spite of being a warrior. Arya took her leave to rejoin her siblings whilst Eddard looked out of his solar to see Prydain walking around the Great Keep with Talisa. I am glad to see them so happy, said Eddard. As my Talisa is doing well in her studies of the north and is always going to the Godswood to pray with Prydain. She will make a fine queen one day, said Ash. Aye, she will. But I worry for Prydain, that he will be forced to fight for the North's freedom as I once did, said Eddard. With Ash's help, Eddard had finished writing invitation letters to all of the bannermen of the North, for a large wedding to be held in Winterfell, for 5 of their children to be wed into various noble families. He had then finished the intended letters for houses Karstark, Marndaly, Mormont, Bolton and Dustin. Until date, The Last Kingdom cast full list of characters in Netflix, 42% off. Harry on Karstark, Mark Rowley. There's Winterfell, brother. And the home of your soon-to-be bride, said Ed as he patted Harry on's back. And she is such a beautiful woman, is Princess Elyanna, said To. Oh, is that jealousy I hear, brothers? Does it hurt you that I'll be marrying her and neither of you will, asked Harry on. Me? No, brother. I enjoy being free and one day being an uncle to my nephews and nieces running around Karhold and teaching them all how to fight as Karstarks should fight, said Eddard. And I'll probably join Wolf Company, said To. Wolf Company was a small army established by King Eddard to deal with criminals and groups of raiders, bandits, slavers and pirates from the Iron Islands or the Three Sisters. They're not bothering you, are they, Harry? Asked Alis. No, they aren't. It'll take more than these 2 fools to annoy me, sister, said Harry on to Alis, their little sister. Now when would we ever do such a thing, Alis? Asked Ed. All of the time, brother. especially with Harry's wedding to Princess Eliana, said Alis. Gods, Eliana is so beautiful, Harry thought as he remembered the last time that he danced with her, at the wedding of Prydain and Talisa Magai. Talisa Magai, or Stark now, better be worshipping the gods and praying at the gods' wood. The North can't have a queen who worships that fire god they've got in Essos or those Valyrian gods they've got in some parts of Volantis. Harry looked to the front at father, whom was riding at the front with his most trusted men at his side. Being the heir to Carhold, Harry was expected of many things by father, and one of those was to marry. Father had been annoyed that Prince Prydain had married a foreigner and not a northerner, as he had hoped for Alis to wed him before a match was made between her and Darin Hornwood. But, Harry was surprised to see father so excited 2 weeks ago when he, Ed and To had returned home from hunting. Asterisk. Father, you seem excited, Harry noticed as he and his younger brothers joined mother and father in the latter's solar. Aye. And for good reason, said father before he passed Harry an opened letter. Harry looked at the broken seal, that of House Stark. He read the letter and his eyes opened wide when he read of the king's offer for Princess Eliana to marry Harry. By the gods, Harry muttered. Me marrying Eliana. Thank you gods, thank you so much, Harry thought as he decided he would give hours of gratitude to the gods before the heart tree in Carhold's Godswood that night. What? What is it, father? Asked Ed. The king has offered for Princess Eliana to marry your brother. And I think we can see he looks very excited, mother explained. Aye, his cock is already hardening, To joked. Shut it, said Harry slapping the back of his brother's head whilst Ed laughed. Have you sent a raven accepting it, father? Eagerly asked Harry. I have. Sent it 5 minutes ago, said father proudly. Gods, I really am going to marry Eliana. She has to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Even more so than the queen. Asterisk. This is it. 2 days from now, and Eliana and I will wed, Harry thought as they were allowed through the gates of the Winter City. Harry rode through the gates with the rest of the entourage of Carhold, with mother and father leading them. At the courtyard of Winterfell, Harry saw Princess Eliana standing with her family, resplendent and plainly gorgeous in a dress of purple and grey. Harry noticed how the purple coloring of her dress brought out her beautiful violet eyes and the amethyst necklace she wore. Mother and father were the first to climb down from their horses, and were greeted by the king and queen. Harry climbed down next and met the king and queen. My king, my queen, said Harry bowing his head to them both. Welcome to Winterfell, Lord Harry said the king, shaking his hand before the queen gestured for Princess Eliana to join them. My lord, she said sweetly. Gods, her voice is so beautiful. I could listen to it all day and never get bored. Gods, what will she sound like when she sings? My princess, an honor, said Harry before kissing her hand, blushing whilst doing so. He tried to ignore the giggles of To and Ed in the background whilst Alis was quietly trying to shut them up. Thank you, Alis. Until the wedding, Harry spent time in Winterfell with To, Ed, Darin Hornwood, Domeric Bolton, Small Janumber, Owen Norrie, Robin Flint, Cleesa Wynn, Joramun Raider, Sigornthon, Torred and Dormund Giantspan, Brandon Dustin, Roderick and Asher Forrester, Roger, Ricard and Roose Riswell, Benfred and Brandon Tallheart and the Stark brothers. Because training marches had been decreed by the king, he and his brothers would be marching with all of them. Prydain, will Deanna be marching as well with us? I've seen her on the practice yard with a sword and with a bow before, and she was very good with both, asked Clee. Aye, she will be. Hope that doesn't bother you, Dom, said Prydain. Nah, only thing bothering me is Aunt Barbary teasing me about Deanna, admitted the heir to the Dread Fort before turning to Brandon. Sorry about that, cousin. But mother loves to tease you, especially about Deanna, said Brandon. And you, Prydain. How is it with Talisa? Does she worship the gods or does she keep her old Volanten gods? Asked Sigorn. Aye, don't worry, she worships the gods. Says she feels at peace in the presence of a heart tree, said Prydain. Good. Won't be good to have an Essosi corrupting future northern princes and princesses with the Volanten customs and Volanten gods. 5 weddings were taking place at Winterfell. Harry's was the first, the next was Domeric's to Princess Deanna, then Brandon's to Princess Serena, Rickon's to Daisy Mormont and Ulrich's to Winifred Marndaly. Harry On had been strictly told by mother to not get into any drunken brawls before the wedding. You are to be married soon. It wouldn't do good to marry your betrothed with bloody hands and a bruised face and stinking of blood and mead, she said. Those are the smells of a true northerner, insisted father. But with all of the north watching Winterfell right now. And in front of the king and queen when Harry On is to wed their eldest daughter. How will that reflect on House Karstark? Mother pointed out. Father nodded and said, you heard you mother, Harry On. Save all that for when you are married and we are back home in Carhold. On the day itself, before the heart tree of Winterfell, Harry On stood wearing his Karstark colors and breathed in and out a few times to calm himself before he turned to see Lyanna being escorted by the king. Who comes before the old gods this day? Asked father. Lyanna of House Stark comes to be wed. A woman grown trueborn and noble. She seeks the blessings of the gods. Who comes to claim her? Announced the king. Harry On Karstark. Who gives her? Eddard Stark, king in the north. Her father. Princess Lyanna, do you take this man? Asked father. I take this man, said Lyanna, walking up to him and holding his hands. Gods, her smile makes me feel so happy, Harry On thought. You may now cloak the bride under your protection, said father. Harry On gently took off her Stark cloak before gently covering her with his cloak, embroidered with the black and white colors of the winter sun of House Karstark. You may now say the vows, said father. I am hers and she is mine. I am his and he is mine. Chapter 28, A Royal Betrothal. Chapter text. Loras 2. Loras accompanied Margaery, father, mother and grandmother to the king's solar, where they were to meet the king and the hand of the king personally. Father was giddy with excitement, thinking that this was to discuss a betrothal between Margaery and Crown Prince Jaehaerys. They arrived at the solar, where a knight of the King's Guard stood watch outside. To be a King's Guard knight, that would be the greatest accomplishment of mine. I don't want to be a lord of anywhere. Willers will be lord of Highgarden one day. Garland is happily married to Leonette and they rule Dunstonbury now. But me, I would be proud to protect Margaery when she is queen. The King's Guard knight knocked on the door. Loras could see partially through his helm and recognized him from Tony's. This was Sir Oswyl Went. Lord and Lady Tyrell are here at your invitation, your grace, said Sir Oswyl. They may enter, Sir Oswyl, said the king. Sir Oswyl opened the door and father and mother were the first to enter, whilst Loras helped grandmother to her chair and Margaery followed behind them. Lord and Lady Tyrell, thank you for coming. And to you too, Lady Margaery. The stories they tell of the Rose of Highgarden don't do you justice, said the king. Your grace is only too kind, said Margaery with an adorable smile and a perfect curtsy that Loras was sure grandmother would be proud of. Now, Lord and Lady Tyrell, I am more than willing to speak on behalf of the Crown Prince in favor of a betrothal between him and between Lady Margaery, said the king. Your grace, I would consider it a great honor indeed for such a betrothal, said father with an excited smile. But, of course there are things that must be considered first, the king butted in, raising his hand to calm father down from being too sycophantic. Loras assumed. Your grace, is the Crown Prince not here at this time? Asked grandmother. The Crown Prince is currently at his studies, Lady Tyrell, but he and the Queen shall be here shortly, said the hand of the king. Grandmother hummed and said, a poor show, isn't it, Lord Hand Connington? That the Crown Prince is not here for meeting a potential bride. That is why we are here first, Lady Tyrell. To ascertain a number of matters before betrothal can be arranged, said John Connington. And what are these, your grace? Lord Hand, asked mother. First of all, I would suggest that a suitable dowry be paid. Bearing in mind that this is for the wedding of a crown prince that will one day be a king, said John Connington. Oh, of course, Lord Hand. House Tyrell will gladly be able to pay any sum of gold towards this end, said father proudly. There was a knock on the door. Your grace, the Queen and the Crown Prince are here, said Sir Oswyl. Let them in, Sir Oswyl, said the king. The door opened and Loras looked around to see a tall boy with silver blonde hair and violet eyes. He was handsome and looked a little muscular, but Loras wasn't impressed. He did not look like he would never spend even an hour in the sparring yard or even ride a horse. This is the Crown Prince. I was expecting someone to look like they've been knighted and are capable of holding their own against a knight of the King's Guard. My Queen, good day. My Prince, An honor, said father, standing and bowing to them. Loras stood with Margaery and he bowed to them both whilst Margaery curtsied perfectly for the queen. She smiled coyly and cutely, just as she had practiced as a girl, to get whatever she wanted, Loras thought, remembering all of the times she had sweetly asked him into getting her and her friends their first cups of arbor golds from the kitchens when she and her friends were 10. My prince. Such an honor, she said, batting her eyelashes at him. He smiled and said, Lady Margaery, nonsense. The honor is mine to meet a lady as beautiful as you. As he kissed her hand, Loras felt a cold shiver travel down his spine. Dare to look or touch her inappropriately now, or when you are wed, and I'll cut your cock and balls off. Perhaps, this may be a good time for you to show the Lady Margaery around the Red Keep, Jaehaerys, the king suggested. Of course, father. My lady, please, said Prince Jaehaerys. Margaery took his hand and they walked outside together. Loras, be a good older brother and look after your sister, said mother. Of course, mother, said Loras, standing up immediately and walking a safe distance away from them. He seems to be all kind and charming, but why don't I like him? He strikes me as someone who is lazy and thinks more of how good he looks in the mirror than how to look like a knight or a prince or a king. The idea of my sweet sister being married to this shit piece, I find repulsive. Thank you, my prince. You were so very kind to show me around, Margaery said perfectly. And thank you for the company, my lady. It is all too rare that a fair and noble lady such as you graces the Red Keep, he replied. You better be good to her, or you will be pissing with a wooden cock. Loras walked with Margaery back to their apartments in the Maiden Vault. Did you have a good time with him? Loras asked. I did, yes. Though he seems as though he is starved of meeting any girls or women, so, that made him easy to charm, Margaery replied. Well, grandmother did say that this is because his mother would ensure this to so that she was the only woman he ever trusted or turned to for when he becomes king, Loras added. As they arrived at the Maiden Vault, Margaery turned to Loras after spotting her closest friends, their cousins Eleanor Tyrell, Thalia Hightower and Desmara Redwine. I'm fine now, brother. I'll just spend some time with them, said Margaery. Very well. I'll see you later then, Margaery said Loras with a smile. What do you think you'll do? More training for the tourney, asked Margaery. I don't think so. I've already done plenty this morning, said Loras before saying goodbye to Margaery. Loras looked around the Red Keep and thought about visiting the gardens. Loras loved going to gardens to relax and breathe in fresh air and maybe find some flowers to gift to the next lady he came across in the stands at a tourney. Margaery often told him that he shouldn't do this. Loras agreed for the most part, but it soon became apparent that it was expected of him as he had done it many times previously. Whilst on his walk, he saw someone leaving the throne room, a familiar face whom made Loras smile. Sir Renly, Loras called. He turned to Loras and smiled as he said, Good day, Sir Loras. Gods, his smile is beautiful. Loras met him at the doors to the throne room and being closer to him made Loras feel happier. What brings you around here this day? Asked Renly. Oh, mother and father were meeting the king to discuss the crown prince wedding my sister, Margaery, Loras explained. Ah. From what little I've seen of the lady, I think she would be a very good queen and has that beautiful Tyrell smile, he commented. Beautiful Tyrell smile? Loras asked with raised brows. Like your own smile, said Renly with a beaming smile. Are you saying my smile is beautiful? Loras felt his cheeks blush at the compliment. And what are you doing at the Red Keep? Asked Loras. Oh, I'm here with my brothers to try and sell ships to the royal fleet. We've built more than enough to make a difference to the royal fleet, however the hand of the king has made it clear of his distaste for my brother Robert, said Renly. Yes, I heard that Storm's End now has a fleet to rival that of Old Town, said Loras. Indeed. Though I'm not much of a sailor. I love being on dry land, said Renly. In fact, what I've always wished was that I was a Tyrell. What? You want to be a Tyrell? Why? Asked Loras. My brothers are both hardened warriors and bear the Baratheon name with pride. My ancestors were great Storm Kings and warriors. I'm no warrior. I enjoy playing the game. And when I last visited Highgarden for making a trading deal for grain, I fell in love with it and envied you and your house for having such a beautiful home, he explained. But, surely, Storm's End will always be home, asked Loras. Oh, it will be. In spite of the rains and the storms, it has its beauties. But when I visited Highgarden, I never wanted to leave. The fruits were all so delicious. The people were all so kind as opposed to being rowdy and hard, which described my brothers Robert and Stannis respectively, he replied. Well, I am the opposite. My parents, my grandmother, my oldest brother and my sister all play the game. As for me, I prefer the jousting lists and training with my sword and my lance, said Loras. Not surprising when you are the greatest knight in the Seven Kingdoms, he commented. Okay, now you're just making me blush, Loras thought. The tourney starts 2 weeks from now. Will you and your brothers stay for it? Loras asked hopefully. They won't. But, I will, said Renly. Good. I really want to see you there, and see me batter down all of my opponents. Ashura 14. The army has arrived, Your Grace, said Sir Roderick. Have the princes gathered to leave with them? Asked Ashura. Not yet, Your Grace. Princess Arya seems very eager to join them, but some of the princes think she won't enjoy it, said Sir Roderick. Oh, Arya. You have always been causing mischief as a little girl, but now, you dream of being a warrior. I shall go and see them, said Ashura, leaving her bedchambers to find her children. She found them in the training yard, where Prydain, Halric and Artos were arguing with Arya, whom was refusing to back down. The rest of Ashura's children had already left their new homes with their wives or husbands. She didn't expect her Lyanna or Serena to be joining their husbands for fighting or marching. As for Diana, whom was a warrior and brilliant with a bow and excellent with a bastard sword, she had said that she would join the march with Domeric. What is going on here? Ashura asked. Her sons and daughter turned to her. Mother, Arya says that she wants to join the march, but we have been telling her that it will be boring and that there will be no fighting, said Artos. It won't. If the Southerners try to invade, I will be ready to fight and kill for the North, Arya said. Arya. Come here, Ashura ordered. Arya looked reluctant to do so until Ashura sent a scathing look at her youngest daughter. Arya, you've still to study at your lessons and learn about being a northern princess, said Ashura. Those are boring. I'm not a princess. I'm a warrior of House Stark, she insisted. How did Ned and his family deal with Lyanna? Arya, great women warriors of the past, such as Nymeria, all studied and knew their lessons. And Nymeria was a princess. There's no shame in such a thing, said Ashura. But they are so boring, mother, she complained. Yes, they can be boring. But how do you expect to know anything of the world if you have no wish to study and learn? Asked Ashura. Perhaps it would be best if we made a compromise. Arya, here is my deal. You will join the march with your brothers, but when you return, you will attend all of your lessons. I will be hearing from Prydain on your behavior whilst you are gone. And if you do not study or pay attention in lessons when you return, you will never again join any future marches, said Ashura. I agree, mother. I promise, I will pay attention, she said eagerly. Okay, join your brothers and pack what you need, Ashura replied, pleased that Arya had agreed. Arya very enthusiastically ran to rejoin her brothers before Ashura called Prydain over and told him the deal she had made with Arya. If she is a bother or becomes bored, let her know that she can always come home, said Ashura. Ah, mother. I think she is too stubborn to admit to when she is in the wrong, said Prydain. Your Uncle Brandon was exactly the same. Ashura walked back inside the Great Keep and found Ned in his solar. Is Arya joining the march then? He asked. Yes, she is, said Ashura. She will be impatient for fighting, said Ned. No, I think that this may teach her discipline and that there is more to war than simply fighting, said Ashura. Ashura noticed what Ned was doing, writing on 2 separate documents. What are those? She asked. Documents of lordship. Halric is now Halric Kelstark, Lord of Moat Cailin. And Artos is now Artos Seastook, Lord of Wolf's Den, Ned said proudly before showing her each of them. Ashura beamed at reading them. And have their betrothals been arranged now? Asked Ashura, knowing how Artos had chosen Wyla Marndale and Halric had chosen Jane Poole. Aye, they have. I've had replies from Lords Marndale and Veon has agreed to the match. Their weddings shall take place after the march and they take their places as Lords of Moat Cailin and Wolf's Den respectively, Ned explained. All is going well then. It will be so strange, for Winterfell to be so empty, said Ashura as she rubbed Ned's shoulders. In the meantime, I have decided to bring Talisa into court with us, said Ned as his hands met hers on his shoulders. Ashura nodded. If she is to be queen one day, she must know of what is expected of her. Good. Has she agreed to come? Asked Ashura. She has, said Ned. Talisa 4. When Ashura and Eddard had offered for her to join them for court sessions, Talisa agreed, warily. Even a moon after being married to Prydain, Talisa was still getting used to her new home and worshipping the old gods and to the heart tree in the Godswood. When she had brought her fears about being considered unworthy to be the queen by the other northerners because she wasn't a northerner, she brought this to Ashura. Ashura smiled and relaxed her before talking. When I came to Winterfell with Ned, I was worried that I wouldn't be accepted by the northerners, because I was a friend of then Queen Elia. My brother was in the Kingsguard and I had spent 3 years in the court of the Mad King. But all that changed when I gave birth to Prydain. Giving birth in the Godswood made all of the northern lords and ladies enamored with him, thinking that the gods would bless him for it. Just by being born where he was born is considered a blessing by all the North. I just hope that he will live up to the many expectations that many have of him. I know he is a good man, and I will always love him for it, but will he be a great one? Father always said that you will always meet good men and great men, but a man who is both is very rare. Talisa stood at the side with Maester Jellimund, Steward Veon and Sir Roderick whilst Eddard and Ashura held court, greeting all sorts of people, from small folk, to merchants and to minor nobles. As well as learning about how to handle a court of courtiers and people seeking actions or compensation, Talisa took this as a chance to learn about the northern peoples. Just from listening to them speak, she noticed how they spoke and they got straight to the point rather than dance around with needless compliments and pointless flattery. Talisa liked that about the northerners and that they didn't waste time and got to the point of the matter. My king. And it's impossible to travel to find a nearby maester in a castle or town when winter comes, said a fearful woodsman whom feared for his wife's ongoing fever. You need not worry, Master Osric. In the last few weeks, I have had ongoing talks with Archmaester Carlon and have reached an agreement to have apothecaries set up around the north to provide for our rural subjects and to ensure that all receive the care they need, especially when winter comes, said Eddard. Talisa looked at Ashura for confirmation. She smiled and nodded. This seems a difficult task, Maester Jellimund. No, asked Talisa. At first it will, my princess, yes. However, once built, maesters newly trained will be sent there to learn and gain experience before being sent to a town, port or even a noble house once they are considered ready, explained the Maester of Winterfell. Gods, why do I feel so unwell all of a sudden? Talisa could feel her stomach feeling awful and the sudden urge to retch as she reached for her mouth as she coughed a little. My princess, are you all right? Asked Steward Veon. I don't feel well, she replied. Maester Jellimund reached for her forehead. You're burning, my princess, he said as he put his hand to his side. Gods, I'm going to retch. Maester Jellimund and Sir Roderick. I see my good daughter looks unwell. Help her to her chambers, said Ashura. Of course, your grace, said Sir Roderick before he helped take her out of the throne room and to her chambers she shared with Prydain. I'm going to retch, said Talisa, taking deep breaths. Sir Roderick. Take her to my chambers. Now, said Maester Jellimund with a note of urgency. Sir Roderick picked her up with his strong arms and took her quickly to Maester Jellimund's chambers, where he grabbed a bucket and passed it to Talisa. Talisa, whom had been managing to hold it in, wasted no time in retching into it. Gods, I fucking hate the taste, smell and sight of this disgusting shit. Talisa was given a chair by Sir Roderick as she sat down to catch her breath whilst Maester Jellimund poured a few cups of water. Was it something you had eaten this morning, my princess? Asked Sir Roderick. I did eat a fair amount of bread, fish and bacon. I couldn't stomach the cheese or beer, she admitted. Maester Jellimund's brows raised at hearing that. My princess, it may be that you are with child, he said. What? I carry a child. Already? Talisa looked down at her belly, her breathing quickening at the thought. Only one way to be sure, he said before telling her to lift her dress slightly. As she did so, Maester Jellimund pressed his hand gently on her belly before pressing his ear against her belly. Yes, You are with child, my princess, said Maester Jellimund. Oh, by the gods! I'm going to be a mother. Talisa felt her eyes moisten at the thought of holding her child in her arms. There was a knock on the door. Is everything all right? Asked the voice of Ashura. Sir Roderick opened the door whilst Talisa used the cups of water provided for by Maester Jellimund to wash out the wretch from her mouth and to drink. Yes, my queen. Maester Jellimund says that soon you shall become a grandmother, said Sir Roderick. A grandmother? Gods, at 8 and 30. I am too young to be such a thing, Ashura japed. Ashura sat beside Talisa and held her hand as she put down the last cup of water. Fear not, Talisa. Prydain will be back here soon and you will both raise your child together. And throughout all of this, I promise to help with all I can. Gods alone know that you will need all of the help you can, said Ashura. I should think so. Giving birth to 9 children, you more than any have the right to say such about the trials of motherhood, Talisa thought as she thanked her good mother. Chapter 29, Friends from the East. Chapter text. Jaime 7. Your nephew, our future king, shall be getting married within a year. And when that time comes, the Tyrells will be alongside us as the key allies of House Targaryen, said father. Just as House Martell would be, if Elia was still queen and Aegon the crown prince. Just as easily as they were expelled, so too can the Lannisters of Casterly Rock and the Tyrells of Highgarden. In spite of father's insistence that this was the height of House Targaryen's power ever since the last of the dragons had died, Jaime was unconvinced of father's optimism that House Lannister would be at House Targaryen's side for whilst Rhaegar is king and when Jaehaerys becomes king. All of father's grand and glorious dreams would be ruined if history repeated itself and if Rhaegar decided to marry Margaery instead and divorce Cersei and exile her and her children to Casterly Rock. As they neared King's Landing, the memories started coming back to Jaime. Of being knighted and joining the Kingsguard. Of standing by Aerys' side whilst he ordered the burnings and torturous executions of hundreds and thousands from the lowest of small folk to nobles. Of being forced to listen to Aerys raping Queen Rhaella. Of bearing witness to Aerys dismissing Princess Rhaenys. Of Rhaegar sparing little attention to Princess Rhaenys and Prince Aegon in spite of all Elia did to try and involve him in his children's lives. Of the horrific murders of Rickard and Brandon Stark and Catelyn Tully. And finally, of Queen Rhaella killing Aerys and Jaime not doing a thing to protect him. But he was also reminded of the way in which Cersei looked at Rhaegar when she married him. She had always adored Rhaegar. But in spite of whatever it was that they shared as children, it was nothing now that she was Rhaegar's queen. I would have just been something for her to kill boredom had I stayed with the Kingsguard, Jaime reasoned as he could see the Red Keep. But Jaime felt that he was happy now. He had Melita, Lauron and High Polar back home in Casterly Rock. He didn't want them to come with he and father. Not to the place where he had suffered and had seen so many suffer. They passed through the King's Gate and then through the gates of the Red Keep, where Jaime felt the memories return to mind of his former brothers of the White Cloak and of how Queen Rhaella and Queen Elia had brought life and happiness to the Red Keep after the death of Aerys and the ascension of Rhaegar. But now with Cersei as queen, nothing was as it was. It troubled Jaime of the rumors in Casterly Rock that the 500-strong force of Red Cloaks of Casterly Rock had become a personal weapon of Cersei's. The rumor was that whenever her spies caught whiff of someone saying insulting words of her or her children in favor of Elia and her children, then the Red Cloaks were sent to murder said guilty party. What would mother think of her if she could see her? Arriving at the Red Keep with father, Jaime climbed down from his horse when greeted with a large reception led by Rhaegar, Cersei and Uncle Kevan. Jaime noticed the 3 children by Rhaegar and Cersei. I've always wondered what Targaryen Lannister children would look like. The eldest was a tall boy, but thin, narrow-shouldered and admittedly quite handsome, but looked bored as though there were better things to do with his time. The youngest was a boy whom was shorter than the other and had a beaming smile on his face as though today was the happiest day of his life. And the girl among them was beautiful and cheerful, and in a way, reminded Jaime of Cersei. But her smile was genuine and kind, not cold like Cersei's. Lord Tywine, Sir Jaime, welcome to the Red Keep, said Rhaegar. My thanks, your grace, said father, whom remained on horseback whilst he shook hands with his goodson. Father, the city is glad to welcome you to the capital once again, said Cersei. So it would seem. Sir Jaime. It is good to see you again, said Rhaegar. Likewise, Your Grace, acquiesced Jaime as he shook hands with him. Jaime turned to Cersei and her children. My queen, said Jaime. Dear brother, you need not use such terms. Come and meet your nephews and niece, she said with a smile as though this was the best day of her life. The only reason why she is smiling is because she thinks that father would be proud of her for establishing a Lannister dynasty here. Like Uncle Jerian always said, father knows everything, and he will know of what Cersei's red cloaks do to those who badmouth her. Jaime noticed how bored Jaehaerys looked, and he saw an evil sneer of a smile as he pushed aside Tyrese and Maegil before scowling away. He also saw the looks on the faces of Tyrese and Maegil, as though this was common to them. But when he saw Cersei, she looked as though Jaehaerys was the finest son alive. Jaime walked with Cersei whilst Maegil and Tyrese had gone for their studies with Pycelle. You have such lovely children, said Jaime, only referring to Maegil and Tyrese. Yes, they are the best children a mother could ask for. Jaehaerys especially. He will be a great king one day, she claimed. Is that so? And if I asked others? What of your own family? Why aren't they here? Asked Cersei. Why? So you can belittle Melita. So your perfect Jaehaerys can humiliate and torment Loron and High Polar. This was purely a trip for Jaehaerys' name a day Tony. It wouldn't have made sense to bring them along such a long way, said Jaime. Don't be like that. It would have been good for Jaehaerys to meet his cousins, she insisted. In spite of them not being true Lannisters, she commented. True Lannisters? And what do you mean by that? Jaime demanded. They far more Lannister than Aunt Jenna's children and grandchildren all put together. Their mother is a weak Marbrand woman. Their mother isn't a Lannister, she replied as though it were obvious and that Jaime was a simpleton. Gods, how stupid can you be? They are happy to have Melita as a mother. She is just like mother when she raised us. Melita is a blessing in my life I have never deserved. She's a better mother than you have ever been to your children. The same could be said of your children. Not being true Targaryens, Jaime replied. Cersei's supercilious smirk turned into an angry glare at that remand. They are children of the two greatest houses in the world. Lannister and Targaryen. Together, they will bring a golden age of prosperity to Westeros, the likes of which have never been seen before, she boasted. And the Northerners? Will Jaehaerys lead the armies of the South to take back the North? Asked Jaime with a grin. Cersei wasted no time in slapping him. Do not talk about my son in such a way. Gods, you have changed. Do you pamper your son when he is nearly 20? But the Northerners will be crushed soon. Viserys and Daenerys are in Essos gathering allies. Rhaegar had sent them at my behest, she said. You see, Jaime, I have done my duty as a Lannister. Something you and that wretched stump of a brother of ours would never know. You never once showed any interest in ruling or learning from father. You were more interested in fighting. Tyrion was more interested in drinking and whoring. Whilst I have done nothing but my duty as a Lannister, learning all I could from father. None but I deserve to rule the Rock when the time comes, she continued. Your modesty remains unchanged. And yet here you are. Trapped in the capital and surrounded by sycophants and lickspittles who will never tell you the truth or what you need to hear. But no, father won't be proud of you. Do you know why? Jaime smirked when he saw the angry glare in Cersei's eyes. Because he knows everything. He knows what your army of red cloaks do in the city to people who talk badly of you in favor of your good mother and Elia. I was just wondering what mother would think of you if she could see you right now. Loras 3. It was the ultimate match of the tourney and Loras could see Renly in the crowds, cheering him on and clapping. Loras blushed at seeing him cheer for him, as he had done so ever since the tourney began in earnest when Loras had unhorsed Lyn Corbray. Now, Loras was against the king's good brother, Sir Jaime Lannister. As he always did before a joust, Loras rode around the audiences with a rose in his hand. But as he neared the royal box, he spotted Princess Maegil. Well, this is the last match and it is her brother Margaery is marrying, Loras thought as he rode towards the royal box. Ignoring expectant looks from the ladies he passed, Loras passed the rose to Princess Maegil, sat next to her cheerful and excited younger brother, Prince Tyrese. Thank you, Sir Loras, said Princess Maegil, whom beamed at him and held the rose close to her heart. He bowed his head to her before riding to his place, just as Jaime Lannister was readying himself. You may be unmatched with a sword if all the stories about your skill are not exaggerations. But how good are you with a lance? Loras looked around the audience one last time before his squire, Daikon Tali, passed his helm. He could see father, mother, grandmother and Margaery in the box next to the royal box. Margaery will be crowned with the floral crown today, Loras thought as he noticed the rose crown of the Queen of Love and Beauty in the royal box. At least, your grace, whom I crown won't be another man's betrothed and I won't start wars from being unfaithful to my loved ones, he thought with a grin as he looked at the king, whom was reading a letter. Loras looked one last time at Renly, whom was on his own, for his brothers had long since gone home to Storm's End. Has he stayed in King's Landing, for me? Loras' mind was distracted by wanting to be sure that Renly would be watching and trying to impress him as he sat there watching. Don't let yourself get distracted, Loras. That's the first step to failure, he thought, remembering the lessons he learned as a boy, from his trainers and from his own experiences, having seen many knights get unhorsed because they spared too many glances at women they were trying to impress in the stands. Begin, shouted the tourney master. Loras was the first to charge, aiming his lance immediately at the bottom of Jaime Lannister's breastplate. Just a little closer, he thought as his lance was getting closer to hitting his opponent. And then, he could feel his arm involuntarily fall back as his lance smashed at his breastplate, just where he had been aiming, whilst Jaime Lannister's lance had missed him entirely. Jaime Lannister fell to the ground, coughing as he took his helmet off. Loras beamed as he took his helm off and looked around at the audiences all clapping and cheering. Loras bowed his head first to his family, giving a quick smile to Renly as he passed his place in the audience. He blushed at seeing Renly clapping for him. He made his final stop at the royal box, where he bowed to the royal family. After a quick congratulations from the king, the tourney master placed the rose crown onto the tip of his new lance. Loras looked to his right for his sister and spotted her beaming at him. Loras beamed back before riding towards her and offered her the crown. Dear sister, none are as fair as you, he said as she placed the crown on her head. A new round of claps was heard across the jousting lists before the king stood up and called for silence. Friends, my subjects of the Seven Kingdoms, as well as celebrating my eldest son's name-a-day, today is also special for yet another reason. I am very proud to announce the betrothal of Crown Prince Jaehaerys to this tourney's Queen of Love and Beauty, Lady Margaery of House Tyrell. Loras joined in the claps at that, but at the same time, he didn't like the supercilious grins Jaehaerys was making as he looked around the lists. Gods, there is nothing I would love more than to shove my lance up his ass, Loras thought before leaving the jousting lists. Loras arrived back in his apartment in the Maiden Vault, exhausted from the jousting and was eager for a bath, as he always enjoyed after jousting. But before he could call for a bath from a servant, he heard a knock on the door. Just a minute, said Loras before quickly putting a green tunic on. He walked to the door and opened it, and was surprised to see who it was. Renly. Sir Loras. Might I come in, he asked. Of course. Please, Sir Renly, said Loras eagerly. Renly entered and Loras was pleased that he had come. My bath can wait. You jousted very well out there, he said as Loras closed the door. Thank you, Sir Renly. I take it jousting is not something you ever do? Loras asked. No, it is not. I was knighted as a name-a-day gift from my brother, he explained. Should I make a move? Or will we just keep dancing around this until he makes a move? He came all this way, surely not to make small talk after congratulating me for winning. Loras walked closer to Renly until he was close enough and reached out for his hand. Loras held it gently whilst staring at Renly's handsome face, just as he was doing the same. You are so beautiful, said Renly. As are you, said Loras before he leant in and started to kiss him. Interlude 9, Marina Martian as Selena de Caceres in Deus Salva Rei, 2018. At Caroline Klaus on Tumblr. Deanna Stark, Marina Martian. Dom, are you coming? Deanna called. I am, Domeric called back, riding to join her. Deanna knew that he was just letting her ride ahead, because Domeric was the best and fastest horseman she had ever seen. The best woman on a horse she had seen, of course, was Arya. See any prey? Asked Domeric. Deanna scanned around the moors and copses nearby, having just ridden past a small village, whose people knew Domeric as they passed and greeted him. Diana enjoyed going around Bolton lands. The people were content, well provided for, there was order and crime was very low. But most of all, Diana enjoyed hunting on the lands, for they were plentiful with game, which she found a good chance to use her skills at archery. Diana looked around once again before spotting an elk, eating from a copse. "Aye. There's our prey," said Diana, pointing at it. Diana picked out an arrow and knocked it in her bow whilst she and Domeric rode closer slightly, giving her a better chance of hitting it. "Can't believe that Arya thought that this is all boring. Nothing quite like the thrill of a hunt and using my bow." Diana had always enjoyed fighting with a sword and using a bow. She favored using a bastard sword, which meant that she could use it as a two-handed weapon if needed, or a one-handed weapon with a shield if necessary. She had first learned to use a bow when she was 5 and a sword when she was 6. And as a wedding gift from mother and father, she had been gifted a castle-forged bastard sword and a dragonbone bow, all of the way from Pentos. The dragonbone bow was the best bow she had ever used, and it could shoot better and had a far better range than all bows. Best of all was that there was very little chance of it breaking in comparison to using a normal bow or even a bow made of ironwood or weirwood. Diana lifted the bow up and closed one eye whilst keeping a steady grip on her bow and a steady line of sight on the prey. "Got it?" asked Domeric. I've got it, my love," replied Diana. And at that, she let go. She grinned when she saw the arrow hit straight into the brains of the elk. It collapsed to its feet before falling completely on its side. "Just where I aimed for," Diana thought with a grin as she looked down at the bow and then gave it a quick kiss. "Best bow in the world. And I'm still getting used to it." She and Domeric rode toward Elk and saw there was already a raven feasting at the blood and brains dripping from the head. "Your skill with the bow never ceases to amaze me," said Domeric. "Oh, thank you, Dom," she said before leaning in and kissing Domeric's lips. She giggled like a lioness when she saw him blush and shyly smile at the kiss. Diana and Domeric both tied the elk to their horses' saddles and started riding back to their camp. Diana enjoyed being assigned to foraging with Domeric. It gave her the chance to hunt and use her bow, and it gave him the chance to go horse riding, both things they loved to do. "Dom. DY. What have you brought for dinner tonight?" called Cleesawin. "Elk. Killed it with one shot to the head, Clee," Diana replied proudly. Clee raised his brows in surprise and looked up at Domeric. "You've got a very interesting lady wife, Dom. I'd hate to have been caught by her going to the brothel." "Well, she is at home then, at the Dread Fort," Domeric replied dryly, with a slight hint of a smirk. Clee unattached the elk from their horses and both he and Smalljan took the elk to a nearby campfire, whilst Diana and Domeric climbed down from their horses and held hands as they walked together to the campfire, where Diana's brothers, sister and good brothers were seated. "You were gone suspiciously long, sister. Don't tell us you've got another Bolton coming along the way," Rickon chuckled before Arya kicked him off of his chair. "No, brother. Just trying to make sure that you won't starve tonight. After all, we do want you to go back home with Daisy and have lots of lovely little half-wolf and half-bear babes running around Bear Island," said Diana. Domeric, with a sharp dagger, already started slicing up the elk. "You're suspiciously skilled with that dagger, Dom. Have you already taught Diana how to flay?" asked Alysanne Mormont. "Aye. She has a particular fondness for chopping a man's balls off," said Domeric as he pulled the elk's skin down. Diana laughed with everyone else whilst she drew her attention to the elk her husband skinned. She loved the smell of meat cooking on a spit. Nothing like the smell of one's prey being roasted on a nice cold evening on a march," said Ulrich as his twin sighed with pleasure at the aroma of roasted elk. As tankards of meat were being handed out to them, Domeric had finished cooking it and was now cutting up pieces. "I think, if I wasn't a Bolton, I would have wanted to be a butcher. There's is something so satisfying about roasting and cooking meat," Domeric commented as he passed some large chunks of meat to Diana. "The best only for my beautiful lady wife," he said. "Why, I shall have to repay that for you tonight, Dom," Diana thought naughtily as she thanked him and sighed as she ate some delicious chunks of elk. John 14. "Lord Hand, Prince Viserys returns," said Kylers. John looked up from his desk and stood up. "He returns, and with plenty of soldiers and allies to take on the thrice-damned northern traitors. As much as I hate to admit it, they were very clever and cunning to beat us the way they did. and they will fight hard for that ugly country they call their homeland. But the fact that winters in the south are barely bearable make the ones in the north should make one realize that such climate only turns boys into hard, resilient and fearsome foes. We made the mistake of underestimating them in Eddard's rebellion, at the cost of tens of thousands of men. That mistake will not happen again. Jon walked downstairs until he had left the Tower of the Hand and found himself at the Red Keep's courtyard, and he saw Rhaegar walking with Cersei Lannister, Jaehaerys, Maegil and Tyrese to Fishmongers Square and on to Blackwater Harbour, closely guarded by Lord Commander Hightower, Sir Jonathan Hoare and Sir Alisa. Arriving, Jon had a closer look at the ships. There were many, all sailed by Oren Waters, the bastard brother of Lord Montfort Valerian. And Jon could see many sigils and banners on the ships, ones of Essos that he didn't recognize. But the ship at the forefront was one bearing the Sea Dragon sigil of House Valerian. The ship was the first to dock, and the first to disembark were Prince Viserys, Oren Waters and numerous other men. Some looked like they were of Westeros and others looked as though they were of Essos. An odd bunch Prince Viserys brings with him, Jon thought as he stood behind Rhaegar. "You've been very busy," Brother Rhaegar commented. "Indeed, Your Grace. I have secured the allegiance of 35,000 sellswords and good fighting men," he replied proudly, before gesturing to his companions. "This is Sir Harry Strickland, commander of the Golden Company. Prendel Nugesn, the captain of the Storakraus. Mero, captain of the Second Sons. Joe Regan, captain of the Long Lances. Vargo Hoat, captain of the Brave Companions. And the so-called Tattered Prince, commander of the Windblown. 35,000 sellswords. That'll make all of the difference when the war starts. It'll be difficult to replace the 70,000 men we lost in the Northern Rebellion. But with these sellswords, the fighting men of the Crown Lands, the Westerlands and the Reach, will bring the Crown's loyal armies to over 200,000, and that doesn't include the loyalists in the Riverlands, the Stormlands and the Vale. It is a surprise to see you and your army amongst us here, Sir Harry. The last time the Golden Company came to Westeros fair shores, they were in service to Maelys Blackfield the Monstrous," said Rhaegar. "Whether red or black, a dragon is a dragon, Your Grace. And the company will always serve a dragon," said Sir Harry as he bowed to Rhaegar. Rhaegar nodded with approval and said, "Fight well in the coming war when the time comes, and as well as gold, your rewards shall be lordships, castles and lands of the north." At that, they all bowed before Rhaegar and swore fealty to him. Rhaegar looked to Viserys, whom looked smug with pride of his accomplishments. "You must have been all over the world," Viserys said. Rhaegar. "Indeed. I have plenty of adventures to share with you, Your Grace," said Viserys proudly. "House Targaryen's strength swells with increasing vigor thanks to your efforts, brother," said Rhaegar before he patted his younger brother's shoulder. "And what of our sister? Is Daenerys not here with you?" asked Rhaegar. Viserys' proud smile changed into a cunning smile, as though he knew something brilliant that Rhaegar didn't. "No, Your Grace. She isn't here, yet. But, rest assured, she brings many armies to join our cause. And a surprise. A great one at that," he said with a grin. "A surprise, my prince?" asked Jon. "Indeed, Lord Hand. Indeed. And it'll be one that they'll talk of all across the world," replied Viserys with a chuckle. "What could it be that she brings? A horde of Dothraki? The Unsullied of Astapor?" Viserys' smile changed to a frown instantly when he glanced at Cersei and then at Jaehaerys, Maegil and Tyrese. He rightly sees Cersei for what she is. Not surprising after how Elia helped raise him when he was still a boy and was playing with Rhaenys, and how good she had been to his beloved mother. Chapter 30, Good and Bad News. Chapter text. Prydain 4. "Now, Arya, you can swing a sword to be sure. But attacking is not the only part of fighting. You need to be mindful of all your surroundings for men backstabbing you or shooting at you. Being mindful of your surroundings helps you live just a little longer to kill more opponents," said Prydain as he lifted his shield up. Arya waved her short sword around a few times before holding up her shield and then striking at Prydain's shield. "Good. Now keep striking at me," said Prydain. As he held his shield up, he winked quickly at Deanna. Deanna quietly walked behind Arya as she attacked his shield. "Die, Stark!" Deanna yelled out before raising her sword up high and smashing it down on Arya. Arya turned in surprise and just held her shield up to block, but the stance was weak and her shield fell from her grip. My back was turned. Arya complained as Diana pointed her sword at Arya. Yes. In battle, Arya, it's all about surviving. You may fight with honor, but not all of your opponents will. Remember what I said, be ready for someone to backstab you. Everyone will want to backstab you if they see that you are a good fighter, Prydain explained. But, there will be Southerners whom fight with honor. They can't all be dishonorable and cruel men in the South. Uncle Arthur is a legendary knight and he is a Southerner and still a great fighter. Now, little sister, if you are fighting a man and then you hear another about to attack you, what do you do? Asked Artos. Arya looked at Prydain and then at Diana. Kill the first and then fight the second, asked Arya. You could. But in the time it takes you to kill the first, the second could split your head open with an ugly mace, said Diana. Kill the second and then the first. Arya suggested. Yes, the second will be fresh and a ready threat against you. But the first will catch his breath in the time you fight against the second, Halric pointed out. So, what do you do, Arya? Asked Prydain. Arya waved her sword around a few times before stopping. Wound the first and then fight the second, she answered. Very good. Wound the first in such a way that is quick and will keep him wounded and occupied so that you can focus on your next opponent. Not everyone you fight in the battlefield will die. Some will be wounded or injured. And many will retreat rather than face hard and scary opponents, Prydain explained. Prince Prydain. Prydain turned around to see a guard holding a sealed letter in his hand. My prince. A letter from Winterfell has arrived for you, he said, bowing his head. My thanks, good man, said Prydain before taking the letter and breaking the seal. Prydain opened the letter and felt his breath escape as he read it. My beloved Prydain. I hope that this finds you well. I write to tell you some very important and happy news. I am carrying our child. Maester Jellimond says that I shall be giving birth 7 or 8 moons from now. I am thinking of you every day and long for the day when you come back and we can raise our child together. I love you so much. Talisa. She carries our child. Why the fuck am I still here and not there with her? Prydain, what is it? What's wrong? Asked Rickon. It's Talisa. She is with child, Prydain finally replied, excitedly. His brothers and sisters cheered for him and patted him on the back for his good news. Prydain started walking back to his tent and away from his siblings as they continued to train. Prydain put his shield and sword in his tent and after picking a parchment, a quill and an ink pot, he began to write a letter for Talisa. Gods, grant us the speed to finish this march so that I can return home to Winterfell and be by Talisa's side when she gives birth. Eddard 15. How goes the progress on the march? Eddard asked Sir Roderick. Your Grace, they were approaching the outskirts of Castle Hornwood yesterday and should be practicing travelling cross-country as of now, said Sir Roderick. Good. Marching cross-country may seem mad, but we may get too used to travelling on the Valyrian roads of the north. The roads of the south are still dirt roads and a third of the width of a Valyrian road. If the armies learn to march cross-country, it will give us an advantage over the southern armies that they would never think to use. And how soon until the march ends? Asked Eddard. I would think up to 6 moons now, Your Grace, Sir Roderick replied. Good. Prydain will need to be here when Talisa gives birth, Eddard thought as he was reminded of the many times he was at Ash's side when she was soon to give birth and refused to ever be apart from her when she was expected to give birth. Sir Roderick left Eddard Solar and Eddard started looking over the information compiled by all lords of the north and beyond. Our is not only a strong army but it is a standing army of 50,000 men. And if needs be, in times of war, an army of 70,000. More can come if we are truly desperate. He then looked down at the map of Westeros. We would never venture into southern territory. We will fight for the defense of our independent kingdom of the north. We will not take the fight to southern lands. And the Westerlands can produce an army of 60,000 at the most, perhaps an extra 10,000. The Reach, an army of 70,000, possibly even an extra 20,000 or 30,000. The Crown lands can perhaps produce an army of 15,000 or 20,000. And then there are their loyalists in the Vale, the Riverlands and the Stormlands. But we still have allies and friends in Dawn, the Riverlands, the Stormlands and the Vale, all of whom are no friends of King's Landing. Once it comes to war, we will be ready and we will make them bleed every step of the way, and just one Northerner will kill at least 10 Southerners before dying. A knock on the door disturbed him from his thoughts of war with the Southerners. Enter, he called. The door entered and it was his daughter. Talisa. Good day. How are you? He asked before pulling out a chair personally for her, seeing her belly further visible. I am well, thank you, Eddard. Though I feel exhausted most of the time and hungry even more of the time, she admitted. Ash was the same when she carried Prydain and all of his brothers and sisters. You are tired because you carry a Stark inside you. And you are hungry because you have two to feed, one being you and the other being your beautiful little child, he explained. Has he written to you? Asked Eddard. Yes, he has. He wrote to me yesterday, saying how much he missed me and that he would be by my side when the time came, she said. Good lad. I've taught him right, then, he thought. And have you given any thoughts as to what you will name your child? Eddard asked keenly. Yes. If a boy, we shall call him Torren. And if a girl, then Lyria, she replied. Torren. One of his ancestors is known as the king who knelt. If a boy, Torren will grow to become a king whom will never kneel. Ashura 15. Ashura didn't like the contents of the raven she had just received. I didn't expect such moves from Roriger. Well, I guess he knows that he cannot conquer the north with just his own troops of the Crown Lands, the Westerlands, the Reach and various loyalists from the rest of the kingdoms, she thought. Ashura walked to Ned Solar where she saw him seated with Talisa. Ash, come in. Talisa was just telling me what she and Prydain were going to call their first child, said Ned. Ash beamed at Talisa and at the thought of being a grandmother as she sat down. What have you decided? Asked Ashura. Torren if it's a boy and Lyria if it's a girl, replied Talisa. Good names. Lyria is a beautiful name for a beautiful girl, Ashura commented. And Torren is a good name. The last king in the north called Torren bent the knee, so it's right that this Torren never bends the knee to anyone, said Ned. Ned, there's something we must discuss. I've just received a raven from one of my spies in King's Landing, said Ashura. Talisa raised her brows and stood up as though she was about to leave. No, no. You are to be queen in the north one day, Talisa. You should be here, kindly said Ned. Good choice, Ned. Oh, okay, said Talisa as she sat back down. What news is there? Ned asked. Viserys Targaryen has returned from gathering friends and allies in Essos. He has come back to King's Landing with several sellsword companies, she explained. Which ones? Asked Talisa. The Long Lances, the Storakraus, the Windblown, the Second Sons and, worst of all, the Golden Company, said Ashura. The Golden Company. But they swore to fight under the Black Fires, not the Targaryens, said Ned. A dragon is still a dragon, so said their commander, Harry Strickland, said Ashura. And how many do they number? Asked Ned. 35,000 by Viserys' own admission, said Ashura. 35,000 sellswords. Now that'll just make them outnumber our armies as they are 5-1, said Ned. What? How many do the northern armies number? Asked Talisa worriedly. Currently, 50,000 are on the march. There are an extra 25,000 all around the north if we need to gather them, but for now, we focus on what numbers we have and the quality of their training and their equipment, said Ned. Will we need to recruit our allies in Essos? Asked Talisa. No, at least not yet. Not until war is declared. We do have numerous advantages over the Southerners. For one, they have only one land entrance to the north. And so they may try to invade by sea. And if they do, the Mandaelis and Mormonts can ambush their fleets or burn them when docked in harbor. And at Moat Cailin, its fortifications have been enhanced and 10 new towers have been built so that it may better defend and hold more men and hold off larger armies invading, explained Ned. Good. And with any luck, the idiots of the south will invade the north in the winter. They'd have to. It's a few years or so until winter starts in earnest and they can't have that much food to feed all of their armies. Not unless Roriger is willing to starve the entire realm just to conquer the north. But, there is so much I never realized about him, that he may just do that just to prove that he is as mad as his father and that none of us ever truly knew him. Jaime 8. Ah, Casterly Rock, Jaime thought as he and father rode through the Lion's Mouth with their entourage. It's always good to be back home and not in that fucking disgusting cesspit that is the capital. How can anyone stomach living there and putting up with the stench of piss, shit, corpses and sewage every day? When they reached the keep, Jaime climbed down as he saw Melita, Loron and Hypola standing there eagerly. Jaime. When you are done with your family, we will speak in my solar, said father before Jaime could even say anything to his wife or children. Yes, father, said Jaime. As father walked away into the keep, Jaime hugged and kissed Melita on the lips. Even when alone, Cersei would never greeted me like this. She never truly loved me like she loves Roger, Jaime thought, as he beamed at Melita and then at Loron and Hypola. What was it like in the capital, father? Asked Hypola eagerly and adorably. Gods, she is the sweetest little girl in the world. It was nothing like home, Polly. Here, Casterly Rock is beautiful and one of the greatest places in the world. But the capital is nothing in comparison to the rock's beauty, said Jaime proudly before hugging Hypola. Uncle Tyrion says that it smells horribly in King's Landing, father. Is that true? Asked Loron. Yes, it does. Absolutely horribly. They don't have sewers in the city. So, be glad that we aren't there. You wouldn't have liked it, Loron said Jaime whilst patting him on the back. And how have you all been? Asked Jaime. I've been learning from Uncle Tyrion, Loron said proudly. Learning what? I do hope he hasn't taken him to brothels. Oh. What has he been teaching you? Jaime enquired. He's been telling me about the Game of Thrones and gives me problems to solve. He says that I have a lot to learn, but I am good at it, he replied. An interesting way to learn about the game. Father would certainly be glad that Tyrion is taking a role such as this in the family. He has far more use in the family and father's great Lannister legacy than Aemon or any of his sons. Jaime left his family to go and see father. Arriving at his solar, he saw Tyrion was already there. I understand I have you to thank for teaching Loron about the game, brother, said Jaime. Well, seeing as his father knows very little of it, I thought it better he learns it from someone who likes the game as opposed to someone who doesn't like it, Tyrion explained. It is important that he learns now. He will be Lord of Casterly Rock one day. And when he is, it will be up to him to lead House Lannister to greater glories, said father. A task which our queen thinks he will be unable to do with Melita as his mother, Jaime commented as he remembered all that Cersei said about Melita. Your sister is guiding her own children to their futures, including our own future king. Though none of them were particularly impressive, father admitted. Does Cersei know your opinions of her children's capabilities, father? Tyrion asked with a childish grin. She heard what I had to say, but whether she understood it or misinterpreted it as praise is another matter entirely, replied father. How fucking dare she call my children untrue Lannisters? Now, Grand Maester Pycelle has written that Prince Viserys has returned from travels to Essos and has returned with all of the best sellsword forces in the Free Cities, including the Golden Company. Numbering 35,000 men, said father. This can mean only one thing. How soon do you think the king will declare war on the north? Asked Tyrion. He wants to wait first, for Princess Daenerys to arrive. She is expected to return soon, with her own armies, said father. Jaime left father's solar, thinking about war and the failed siege of Moat Cailin. He could still remember the many men who died at his side as he charged towards the walls. And as he retreated, he could remember the hundreds of men screaming for help. Roger better have a good plan to invade the north. The last time ended in an ass-kicking that no one thought the Northerners were capable of giving us. Tens of thousands of men were slaughtered, and for what? Chapter 31, She Returns, and Not Alone. Chapter text. Prydain v. This had been Prydaine's fourth march. His third with his brothers and his second with Deanna and his first with Arya. As well as learning to keep a strong momentum in marching in all climates and terrains, it was also a chance for Prydain to train with different people, from common-born soldiers to young noblemen. He found that training with many different people helped him become better. Prydain chose to fight with a great sword. As well as being strong and fast, he felt that it would be good practice for when he would one day wield ice and rule as Lord of Winterfell and King in the North. His siblings all had varied fighting choices. Halric fought with a longsword and shield. Artos wielded a long sword and a dagger. Deanna fought with a bastard sword. Ulrich fought with 2 swords. Rickon fought with an axe and shield. And Arya fought with a longsword in duels and 2 dual daggers for close quarters. Now that the march was ending, they were all returning home to Winterfell, which felt good for Prydain and for Arya. But for Prydain, it had been 5 moons ever since he had received the raven from Talisa, and he was determined to be there for when Talisa gave birth. However, Prydain remembered how Mother would scream when she was giving birth to Serena, Arya, Ulrich and Rickon. Soon after riding through the gates into Winterfell, Prydain climbed down from his horse and beamed at Talisa as she stood beside Mother and Father. "Welcome home," Prydain greeted Father. "Thank you, Father," said Prydain. "And how was your first time on a march, Arya?" asked Father. "I'm so glad I went. I learned so much, Father. I am so much better at fighting with swords, daggers and bows," she replied excitedly. "We are glad to hear this, Arya. But, I hope this means that you will fulfill your part of our bargain," Mother said with raised brows. Arya nodded reluctantly and Prydain grinned. "Having to pay better attention at your lessons, Arya. Gods, I hope Maester Jellimond is ready for this." Prydain ran up to Talisa and hugged her gently. "Gods, I missed you so much," she said before kissing him hard on his lips. "And I missed you. How are you?" "What has Maester Jellimond said?" asked Prydain as they walked back inside the great keep, holding hands. "He says another moon," she said before taking the hand she was holding and placing it on her belly. "Gods, I can feel it kicking." "Can you feel our little warrior trying to make its mark in the world?" she asked. "I." "Gods," Prydain exclaimed. Prydain felt elated to be back home and to be there with Talisa. For many weeks and moons whilst on the march, he was afraid that he wouldn't return home in time to be by Talisa's side. To help her, he would always accompany with her when Maester Jellimond was to examine her or help her with whatever it was she needed. 3 weeks after returning home, Prydain was walking with Talisa to the Great Hall to break fast with his parents and with Arya. "Maester Jellimond says that your lessons have been going well, Arya." "I am glad," said Mother. "Just keeping the deal we made," Arya replied before drinking from a tankard of Carhold bronze. "I think you are turning into a Mormont," Father commented. Arya beamed at the mention of the House Mormont, the house of the young women she befriended on the march, Lyra, Jarell and Lyanna. "That's not a bad thing, Father. The Mormonts produce great warriors from the men and women of Bear Island," Prydain commented. "Though I think that Arya is a bit small to be as burly or as hard as someone such as Daisy or Alysanne Mormont," said Father. Prydain turned to Talisa when he felt her grip on his wrist tighten. "Talisa," he asked, worried. Rather than speak, she was panting and looked sore in pain. From the corner of his eye, Prydain noticed how Mother immediately sat up and her eyes opened wide at Talisa. "Get her to Maester Jellimond. Now," she said. Wasting no time, Prydain helped her stand up and ran with her to find Maester Jellimond, whom was writing a letter in his chambers. "My prince?" he asked. Before he could say anything, Talisa started to scream. "Get her onto the bed now," he gently commanded, whilst gesturing to a bed he had in his chambers for those whom needed care. Prydain did as he was told and helped her lay down on the small bed. "My prince, you should leave," said the Maester of Winterfell. "Why? I have to be by her side." Prydain insisted. He felt a hand on his shoulder. "Come, Prydain. She needs to do this on her own," said Father. Prydain reluctantly followed Mother, Father and Arya outside. But, Prydain hated being outside, when he could hear full well how Talisa screamed. "I need to be there. By her side." Mother and Father could see how he looked at the door. "Prydain, she needs to be on her own," said Mother. To Prydain, the waiting felt like hours before he could hear the screaming stop. He turned to the door just as it ended and he could hear the crying of Talisa and a babe. As soon as he heard the door unlock, Prydain wasted no time in waiting for Maester Jellimond and he charged inside to Talisa's side. As he stopped, he stared at the tiny child she held in her arms. my prince. All is well. The little princess is well, said Maester Jellimund. Princess. It's a girl. We have a beautiful little daughter, my love, said Talisa as she beamed at both Prydain and their daughter. Are you well? Prydain asked, holding her hand. Yes, I am, she said before Prydain leant down and kissed her on the lips, and then she passed their daughter to him. Lyria. Hello, my little wolf, whispered Prydain as he beamed at his tiny daughter, who had stopped crying and was now fast asleep. Now, this just makes me feel too young to be a grandfather, commented father as he, mother and Arya joined them. What have you called her? Asked Arya. Lyria Stark, said Prydain. Jon 15. What news is there from my rebellious and traitorous subjects of the north, Lord Varys? Asked Rhaegar. There has been a feast in Winterfell, your grace. Eddard Stark invited the bannermen of the north to Winterfell to celebrate the birth of his granddaughter, Lyria Stark, born from his eldest son, Prydain, and his wife, Talisa Magai of the Tigers of Volantis, said Lord Varys. That'll make things difficult when the war is won. Once Prydain Stark has a son, will his little son be raised to be a good lord of Winterfell in King's Landing, or will he be sentenced to the Night's Watch as a little boy when he is old enough? Either way, Rhaegar would never condone the murder of children. As much as I may despise his father Eddard, Prydain Stark is not at fault for those treasons, nor is his daughter Lyria or his future heir. Lord Varys, how many spies do you have in the north? Asked Sir Kevan. Regretfully, not as many as I used to have, Sir Kevan. You see, ever since the Northerners succeeded in their rebellion, many Northern commoners see little need or want to serve as a spy in service of their true king. I have a few little birds, but it is rare that they sing songs that are important to hear, Varys explained. How many do our armies number as of now, your grace? Asked Richard. Viserys' allies, adding to the full might of the Crown Lands and Narrow Sea, makes 70,000. As for the Westerlands and the Reach combined, well over 150,000, said Rhaegar. And have your birds said anything about the armies of the north? Asked Miles. They have, Sir Miles. Though it would seem that they have just finished one of their marches. And they currently have a standing army which numbers over 50,000, in times of peace. I do not know how many more in times of war, however, Varys admitted. And that is worrying. That we truly know nothing about the north. Before the first war against Eddard Stark, we all assumed that they could field an army of a little over 20,000. But in 20 years ever since Rhaegar was crowned king, Eddard Stark has changed everything about the north. Though he has committed a great many treasons since his father's execution, I cannot help but admire the fact that Eddard Stark has accomplished so much in those years than any king or lord I can think of. A loud knock was heard on the doors to the small council. Your grace, asked Sir Alisa. Enter, Sir Alisa, said Rhaegar. Sir Alisa Thorne entered and bowed his head before he spoke. Your grace, Princess Daenerys' fleet has been seen. It is said that it shall arrive within the hour, he announced. Thank you, Sir Alisa, said Rhaegar before facing Jon and the rest of the small council. My lords. We shall reconvene later, once I have greeted my sister and seen what she brings for House Targaryen and see what Viserys looked so excited about earlier, said Rhaegar. Indeed. Viserys looked very excited when asked about Daenerys' results. And was insistent on keeping it a surprise. I hate surprises, so this better be worth all of the waiting. Jon accompanied Rhaegar, Cersei, Jaehaerys, Maegil and Tyrese to Blackwater Harbour, and upon arriving, Jon could see that the flagship was just about to dock. From where he was standing, Jon could see several soldiers in a strange armor that he didn't recognize and large and muscular men wearing little leathers or furs. So this was the surprise. Dothraki and the Unsullied of Astapor. How did Princess Daenerys secure the allegiances of such men? How many of both has she brought with her? Sister, welcome home, said Rhaegar as Daenerys stepped onto the gangway and climbed off of the ship and onto dry land. Thank you, your grace. In the name of House Targaryen and in the name of the King of the Seven Kingdoms, I bring 20,000 Dothraki and 8,000 Unsullied, she said with a curtsy. 28,000. By the gods, with the Dothraki and Unsullied on our side, not even the mighty Northerners would stand a chance against the full might of great House Targaryen. My congratulations and gratitude, dear sister. But do they speak the common tongue? Asked Rhaegar. A few do. I've been having their commanders and leaders learn from various multilingual slaves I have freed, she explained. Excellent, sister. Excellent work, said Roriga before he turned to Viserys. Quite a surprise indeed, Brother Roriga commented. Viserys just grinned. Your Grace. Neither the Unsullied nor the Dothraki were the surprise, he said. What? What is it then? Viserys, how long have you been keeping them in suspense? Daenerys asked with a disapproving expression, but japing tone. Too long, dear sister. Too long, Viserys admitted with a grinning shrug. Daenerys gave a command in an unfamiliar language, which sounded like Dothraki, for Jon had heard Valyrian from years of the Mad King speaking in it and Roriga reading Valyrian phrases out loud from his scrolls or his books. And 6 sun-kissed servants, dressed in Dothraki riding furs and leathers, brought an enormous crate onto the quay, followed by 2 more crates of the same size. And what are these, Princess Daenerys? Asked Cersei. Similar to Viserys, Daenerys barely acknowledged her presence. Daenerys nodded and the crates were opened, and Jon jumped when he heard a guttural screeching coming from all 3. By all my ancestors! From each crate was a dragon. What in the 7 hells? How did she do this? The Daenerys. How? How did you? Roriga could barely ask. All balked and stepped back from the crates. All but Daenerys, Viserys and Daenerys' servants and companions. A friend in Pentos gifted the eggs to me on my arrival there. And it was in Pentos I learned that the only way that dragons can be hatched, is through a Targaryen burning with a living sacrifice, she explained, though she looked sad as she mentioned the sacrifice. Sacrifice, Aunt Daenerys? Asked Maegil. A loved one. Not just any sacrifice. It doesn't do good to mention who. But, with the dragons, I secured the allegiance of the Unsullied and a horde of 20,000 Dothraki, led by Khal Rakaro, she explained. Seeing his sister saddened, Viserys walked to her and gently patted her shoulder and sympathetically smiled at her. A sensitive subject for her. Best not to mention it then. These dragons. They aren't big, sneered Jaehaerys. Both Viserys and Daenerys looked scornfully at him. They were hatched less than 2 years ago, Jaehaerys. Give them time to grow. Though it would seem they are growing up faster than you ever will, snapped Daenerys. Yes, and they cannot be born from skinning little kittens. Is that what you prefer, little nephew? Murdering those too small and weak to defend themselves? Viserys snarled. Jon managed to resist a chuckle whilst Jaehaerys fumed and stormed off with his mother closely following behind him, after shooting hateful glares at Viserys and Daenerys. What are they called, Aunt Daenerys? Asked Tyrese. Jon looked at the 3 dragons, each was just the size of the table of the small council. One was colored black and red. The second was a mix of dark green and bright green. And the third was white and gold. Daenerys pointed at the black and red dragon, that is Carnax's. Then she pointed at the mixed green-colored dragon and then the white and gold one, Rollerian and Aerys Aulus. Eddard Stark will surrender if he is sensible once he hears that we now have 3 dragons. Elia 8. What? Doran exclaimed. For the first time in a long time, Elia could see just how shocked and alarmed Doran was. Under normal circumstances, she and Oberyn would have jested about it, but this was no jesting matter. Dragons? Elia asked Oberyn. Yes. 3. Currently are as big as the table in your solar, brother. They are less than 2 years old, but they will grow up. And once they do, they will consolidate all power that they have across the 7 kingdoms. And with their army's size in the Crown Lands tripled, they will march on the north once again, said Oberyn. And largely diminish Aegon's chances to claim what is rightfully his, Elia inwardly told herself, finishing what her brother would not say. Brother, what do you know about their new allies? The Dothraki and the Unsullied, asked Elia, hoping that Oberyn's past as the commander of the Second Sons would grant some insight. The Dothraki are fearsome warriors. Deadly. But no matter what promises of battle or plunder they came to Westeros with, they will not enjoy the climates of the north. As for the Unsullied, they are great warriors. Aside from their lack of bedroom prowess, they are indomitable on the battlefield. But, their main weakness is that they are so disciplined that they always fight as one, and rarely retreat, even in the face of imminent danger. Ashura needs to know that they now have the best sellsword armies in the free cities, a horde of Dothraki, an entire legion of Unsullied and 3 small but growing dragons. Oberyn, is Nymeria still planning to travel to Winterfell? Asked Elia. Yes, she is. Her uncle Malakwo and other cousin Joranos are traveling to see Talisa and the future Lady of Winterfell, said Oberyn. Elia noticed how he left out King in the North. She couldn't blame him. With all of the odds against them, it would take a great warrior to outfight such armies and find some way to crush their dragons. Elia wrote a letter warning Ashura and Ned of the dangers coming from King's Landing and of the armies and dragons that they now had. Soon after sending it by Raven, she had left her chambers to find Nymeria. She found her in the stables, packing a horse and tucking her beloved bullwhip into her belt. Aunt Elia, she said, bowing her head. Nymeria. I understand from your father that you are traveling to Winterfell to meet your cousin and her daughter, said Elia. I am, yes, she replied with a nod. When you arrive there, can you bring King Eddard and Queen Ashura this letter, please, she asked before passing her a second letter she had written. Of course, she said before taking the letter and tucking it into her rucksack. But, if you don't mind me asking, Aunt Elia, why do you not send it by Raven, she enquired. Its contents, I would not trust to a raven, she explained, and left it at that. Of course. Good night, Aunt Elia, said Nymeria. Safe travels, Nymeria, said Elia before walking back to the old palace and watching Nymeria ride for Planky Town and then a ship to White Harbor. Elia left for the September of the old palace and began to pray. Mother, keep the realm safe from yet another war that would slaughter many thousands of innocent lives. Warrior, keep the North strong and safeguard them from Rhaegar's foolish attempts to conquer it, at the cost of greater losses than Daeron the young dragon had suffered when he tried to conquer Dorne. Chapter 32, From the Sands to the Snow. Chapter text. Nymeria. I. Gods, father never said it was this cold, Nymeria thought as she could see Winterfell. I just hope that it as warm inside as father and Aunt Elia described it, she remembered as she nudged her horse further on. She admired the Valyrian roads on which she rode, reminding her of the ones in mother's homeland of Volantis. I haven't seen Talisa for 10 years now, she thought as she remembered the last time she saw her and her brother, sister and parents in Volantis whilst Uncle Malakwo was standing for election as Triarch. When Nymeria was revealed to be mother's bastard daughter, many of the Maegais and Tigers were hostile and cold to Nymeria. Many, but not Talisa, who was always kind to her and showed her own family that Nymeria was as Maegai as she was Martell. She passed through the gates into the Winter City and then through the gates into Winterfell, just as what looked like merchants of the Summer Islands were leaving, with heavy chests being loaded onto a caravan. The merchants looked satisfied as they were climbing into a wheelhouse. What have they been trading in? Being Summer Islanders, the only thing that they could have been selling would have been their golden heartwood. They can't have been selling Summer Islander girls to the Starks. As delicious as Summer Islanders are, these Starks are too honorable for that, Nymeria deduced. Nymeria looked around the reception that said goodbye to the Summer Islands merchants. There was no mistaking Queen Ashura Stark. Even in her late 30s and having given birth to 9 children, Nymeria was impressed with just how beautiful she still was and how her violet eyes shone in the winter sunshine. And then there was the famed king in the north. He looks just how father described him. Hard, honorable, unyielding and strong, she thought as he gruffly spoke to a tall and muscular young man with the same violet eyes as the queen in the north. He was very handsome, with long black hair like the king, very muscular and hard, and was holding a babe in his arms. It was only when Nymeria saw a young woman step next to him and then gently kiss the head of the babe, that was when she realized that he was Prydain, Prince of the Wolfswood. Cousin Talisa, called Nymeria. Talisa and Prince Prydain turned to Nymeria. Nymeria. Welcome to Winterfell, she said, beaming, as Nymeria climbed down from her horse. Nymeria shivered yet again as she climbed down from her horse. Talisa surprised her by hugging her. Oh, it's so good to see you again, cousin, said Talisa. And you. And you. Gods, not only are you married and a mother, you are now the future queen of the north, said Nymeria. And when Nymeria saw the Prince of the Wolfswood walk to join them, she could see why the two fell for each other. Gods, he is handsome. It's a good thing that Oberyn, Tyon, Sarilla, Rhaenys and Arianne aren't here. They, and I, would all be fighting over who would try to seduce him. My prince, she said, curtsying to her cousin's husband. Lady Nymeria. Welcome to Winterfell, he said gruffly. Gods, I think even Daemon and Endre might fall in love with him if they were here. Come, cousin. It's much nicer and warmer inside, said Talisa. The three walked inside, with Prydain gently holding his beautiful little daughter. This must be Lyria, said Nymeria. Yes, Princess Lyria Stark, said Talisa proudly as Prydain handed their daughter to Nymeria. Hello. Hello, little princess. Aren't you the prettiest little princess in the world? She asked as the babe princess stared at Nymeria in curiosity. Gods, it's so warm inside. Nymeria exclaimed as she suddenly wanted to take her furs off. Warm water piping from springs not too far away, Prydain explained. Father and Aunt Elia weren't exaggerating. Gods, the north is full of surprises. So, cousin, what brings you up here from Sunspear? Asked Talisa. Well, actually I wanted to see you, Talisa, and see how you were and meet your beautiful little girl. And, my Aunt Elia wanted me to pass on a letter to the Queen, Nymeria admitted. What letter? Asked a beautiful Western Dornish accent from in front of them. Nymeria had forgotten that the king and queen in the north were a little more than a spear's length in front. This letter, your grace. My Aunt Elia said she didn't trust the news to a raven, said Nymeria as she pulled the letter from her knapsack and held it out. A large and burly northerner with long white hair, beard and whiskers took the letter and passed it to Queen Ashura. My thanks, Lady Nymeria. Please, be welcome here in Winterfell, she said with a beautiful and enchanting smile. Ashura 16. Ashura walked with Ned to his solar upon being given Elia's letter from her visiting niece. What could it be? Ned asked. I do not know. Her letter she sent by Raven told of how many new armies Rhaegar has now and that he has 3 small but growing dragons. But what this is about, I have no idea, said Ashura. In Ned's solar, Ashura broke the seal and read the letter with Ned. To Ashura, Lady of Winterfell and Queen in the North. My dear Ash, gods, it feels like such a long time since I had last come to Winterfell to see you, Ned and your beautiful children. I don't know if Artie has told you, but we've been meeting in secret for the past year now. It has been so wonderful being with him again, it's hard to even write it down. But, now that you know the facts of what armies Rhaegar has and his new allies, and most importantly, his dragons, I am prepared to make this offer on behalf of Aegon. By the time that you read this, I will have begun to write to various lords whom have no love for Rhaegar, such as Edmure Tully, Elbereth Arryn and Robert Baratheon. If successful, I would gain their allegiance for Aegon and with the help of the Seven, take what is rightfully his and not the spiteful little shit of a son of Cersei Lannister. If you help me, I will guarantee that Aegon recognizes Northern independence and that no Targaryen will ever again lay claim to Winterfell or think that the Northerners owe their allegiance to the Iron Throne. Let me know your answer by letter to Nymeria. I know that I am asking a lot of you, my beloved Ash. But I need you and Ned. Yours faithfully, Elia Martell. Ashura turned to Ned as he sat down on his chair and Ash looked at his grey eyes. Just by seeing how hard his grey eyes turned, she could tell that he was deep in thought. This seems like a very good deal. And I trust Elia that she would ensure that Aegon would recognize Northern independence as opposed to Rhaegar and Cersei trying to bribe us with small council positions and marriages with their children. What do you think, Ned? She asked. I think that it's a good proposition. My only worry is what Rhaegar's next move is. If the reports are true, then he has the largest army any Targaryen king has ever had. He probably has more men than he did in the war, Aegon the Conqueror, Daeron the Young Dragon and Rhaenyra all put together. Especially now that he has 3 dragons. With such armies and the promise of the destruction of the North, he will turn his attention to the North. But with allies united against them, we may stand a chance, said Ned. What do you think, Ash? Asked Ned. I agree. However, we would need to be clever about this. And have White Harbor's citadel study ways in which could kill dragons. And we should call the banners. Tell the bannermen what is going on and that war may be inevitable, Ashura advised. Ned nodded. I write a letter to Elia and I'll write letters to the bannermen, said Ned. Ashura wrote a letter agreeing to Elia's offer to give to Nymeria. But, in it, she made it absolutely ironclad that complete northern independence was the only thing the northern peoples would agree to, and that they would never again bow to the Iron Throne, no matter how great a King Egon turned out to be. Talisa v. Talisa was glad to have reunited with Nymeria and cheerfully said goodbye to her before she left to return home to Sunspear. I fear for you, cousin. I really do. In spite of how the North has advanced in recent years, I fear that it won't be enough when Rhaegar sends his armies to the north, she fearfully confessed. We all fear that, Nymeria. But, we aren't alone. I promise that we will be defended, Talisa said, more to reassure herself than to reassure Nymeria. But soon after seeing Nymeria leave for White Harbor, they received a raven from Volantis. Talisa was excited to receive news from home and from her family. The last she had heard from Volantis was that father had been re-elected Triarch of Volantis and beating the elephants for good with a greater overwhelming majority than in the last election. My beloved Talisa. Your brother, sister, mother and I will be coming to Winterfell to see you and to see my little granddaughter. It's no exaggeration when I say that your marriage to Prydain has helped us win this election and may yet win us next year's election also. There's never been a Volanten marrying a future king or Volanten blood joining with a great house that has ruled for an especially long time. With all of this in mind, I predict a greater relationship between the North and Volantis. We all look forward to seeing you, your husband and my beautiful granddaughter when we arrive. Yours faithfully. Father. Father was re-elected Triarch because I married Prydain and will one day be queen in the North. Talisa brought the letter to Prydain and his parents as they met in the King's Solar. She noticed how Eddard and Ashura looked particularly interested by the mention of greater relations between the North and Volantis when she read it out to them. Is there something wrong? She asked. You heard the news from your cousin? Asked Eddard. Yes, I did. But no amount of armies can storm Moat Cailin or invade by sea, can they? She asked, feeling reinforced in her beliefs of the strength of the North, having recently toured around the North with Prydain. That is true. But, there's always a way to break through such defenses. Especially now that they have 3 small, but growing, dragons. They are almost 2, but by the time they are 5, that is when a dragon's head is larger than a fully grown horse, Ashura pointed out. What can we do? Prydain asked. Your mother and I have already sent letters to Elia Martell agreeing to her alliance, and we have sent letters to the Bannermen that another war with the South may be inevitable, said Eddard. But an alliance with Volantis would be a great benefit to us, said Talisa. Would your father send troops to the North? Asked Prydain worriedly. Yes. The Tigers are always hungry for war or for an excuse for the warriors of Volantis to fight and earn glory. My brother is no different. He has always been eager for glory. And the Tigers control one of the best fighting forces in Essos, the Tiger Cloaks, she explained. These Tiger Cloaks, is it true that they are slave soldiers? Asked Prydain. It's strange how slavery is so common in Volantis but is criminal here in the North. A good thing, of course, but would they accept any Tiger Cloaks or Unsullied whom Father and Joranos bring to fight in this war? Yes, it is true. But they are freed after a designated period of loyal service. 10 years at the least, she explained. The Bannermen would frown on slave soldiers being used to fight in our wars, as would I, said Eddard. Father, so are the Southerners. Rhaegar has an entire legion of the Unsullied of Astapa, Prydain pointed out. Perhaps, once they've proven that they can fight as ferociously as their name suggests, freedom could be granted to them as a reward. Ashura suggested. Both Eddard and Prydain agreed to this before Prydain left with Talisa. She saw how worried Prydain looked as they left to go to Lyria's chambers. Are you okay? She gently asked as she held his arm with both hands. He gently shook his head. All my life, I've been prepared for the fact that war may come with the South. I thought I would be ready, but I'm not. I'm just so scared, for us and for Lyria, he admitted. This is one of the many reasons why I love you. Most men I've met, whether older or younger than you, would never try to show weaknesses to anyone, whether physical or emotional. Talisa noticed how Prydain was never afraid of being himself around her and that he was unafraid to let the world know just how much he cared for her, for Lyria, for House Stark and for the North. We are safe here. Lyria is safe. And you will protect her, I know that. I know that the Southerners will find it impossible to conquer the North, and especially the Northerners, even when they have 3 dragons," said Talisa as she hugged him. "I promise I will always protect you and Lyria." "Always," he vowed. Talisa could hear him close to tears as he spoke. "May the gods keep the North safe, and my little Lyria safe. Winter is almost upon us, and when it comes, the North will be better prepared for it than the Southerners. They would be fucking stupid to invade the North in winter time." 2 weeks after she had received the letter from father, she was giddy with excitement upon hearing the news that they were sighted on the road and would be arriving at Winterfell soon. Talisa stood with Prydain, Arya, Eddard and Ashura as the household of Winterfell gathered to greet them. Talisa held Lyria in her arms as she watched as a wheelhouse arrived. The wheelhouse's doors were opened by 2 of father's unsullied guards, and he and Joranos were the first to climb out. Father helped Elissa out of the wheelhouse first, and then Joranos helped mother down. "Your Graces, on behalf of Volantis and my house, we thank you for your welcome," said father, bowing his head to Eddard and Ashura. "You and your family are of course our own, Triarch Malakwo. You are most welcome to Winterfell once again, especially to meet your granddaughter," said Eddard, gesturing to Talisa as she held Lyria. "Sister, it is good to see you well and to see my beautiful little niece," said Elissa as she greeted them first. "Hello. Hello, Princess Lyria," Elissa whispered as Talisa passed Lyria to her. "She is such a beautiful little girl," said mother after Elissa had passed Lyria to her. "My congratulations, Talisa." "So does this mean that Lyria will be queen one day?" asked father. "Yes. The king and queen decreed that women have the same inheritance rights as men," she explained. "She'll grow up to be a great warrior and queen one day," Joranos remarked as they walked inside the first keep to where Talisa's family were staying. "I hope she will not have to fight the battles that her grandfather has fought for the North and what he and her father will have to do in these coming moons and years." "I hope so. But I also hope that she will have a good husband at her side," said Talisa. "If he isn't, I promise I'll come and beat him bloody," Joranos vowed. "Of that, I have no doubt, brother. Moving aside from such violent talk, I gather that our cousin Nymeria was here recently," said Elissa. "Yes, she was. It was so nice to see her again," said Talisa. Though as she mentioned Nymeria, she could see how uneasy mother and father looked. "Her mother brought shame to the Tigers and to the Magai," said father. "She is not a Magai, she is a Sand of Sunspear. She may not be Martell or Magai, but she is family and she is a good woman," Talisa replied. "Be that as it may, the philandering actions of her father brought shame to the Magais, and was the reason I wasn't re-elected that year," said father. Talisa thanked the gods when Lyria started to cry suddenly, and mother and father both turned their attention to their granddaughter and started playing with her to calm her down. "Thank you, Lyria." "So, how was Nymeria?" whispered Joranos. "She was well. She was telling me stories about growing up alongside Wolf Prey's son and daughter whom he cast aside for his Lannister queen and her children," replied Talisa. John 16. "My lord hand, Prince Viserys is here for his appointment," said Kailas. "Bid him through," Kailas replied Jon, putting his quill in his ink pot and drinking from his cup. Kailas opened the door for Prince Viserys and both he and Jon bowed to him before he sat opposite Jon. "My prince, would you care for a drink?" asked Kailas. "Some Arbor Gold would be most welcome," "Yes," replied Viserys. Kailas nodded and took his leave. "A good steward you have, Lord Hand," he remarked. "Indeed. He's served my father and me contentedly and faithfully ever since he was about Prince Tyrus' age. And never once has he ever asked for any reward," said Jon. "A pity that not all of my brother's subjects are as content, as loyal and without greed such as he," Viserys commented. "I've often found myself wondering those same words, my prince," replied Jon. Jon took a quick sip from his water before sealing a letter intended for cousin Ronnet. "Now, how might I be of help to you, my prince?" asked Jon. "It's concerning the future of the Iron Throne." "May I speak in confidence to you, Lord Hand?" he asked. "Of course, my prince. Not even the king will hear of what we speak, if you should so wish it," said Jon. "I do." There was a knock on the door, which he presumed was Kailas. "Enter," said Jon. Both remained silent as Kailas set down a goblet and filled it with a jar of Arbor Gold. Whilst Viserys sipped from it, Jon held up the letter he had just sealed. "Kailas, if you could have this sent to Griffin's Roost," said Jon. Of course, Lord Hand, he said before taking the letter and leaving the solar. Viserys had another sip from his cup before he continued. To put it bluntly, we both are aware of the unsuitability of Jaehaerys. From all that my mother told me of my father, it is clear that the madness my father had, lives now in my atrocious nephew. I will not have House Targaryen's great legacy brought down by this repulsive little shit, when already the great legacy is tainted by my father, certain men amongst my ancestors and, most recently, the Northerners fighting for independence. I know all of this to be true. But whom will he suggest to be heir? Tyreus. The boy is sweet and kind and could be taught to be a wise king, but is naive and would fall victim to all those whom would take advantage of him and use him for their own ends. Aegon. I know little of him, to my regret. But, seeing as there have been no gruesome stories about him from Dorne, suggests that he could be raised to the Iron Throne, and once we see him here, a fully grown man, there would be no doubt as to his legitimacy as a Targaryen and the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Or does Viserys intend to become king? These are dangerous things of which you speak, my prince, said Jon. And yet we live in dangerous times. There is only one rightful heir to the Iron Throne, and yet there are those who think him to be a bastard, including his own father, he pointed out. Aegon. Good. I confess to my great regret that I do not know about him, my prince. Nor would I have expected you to. But, before she died, mother made me promise that I would help Aegon take his rightful place. I have established contacts in Sunspear, and all assure me that he has grown up to be a good young man and that he has been taught what is expected of a Targaryen king, he replied. I see. Elia and her brothers have not given up on Aegon's rightful place. Nor should they. Do Prince Doran, Prince Oberyn and Princess Elia know of your intentions for Aegon? Asked Jon. No. To protect him and his sister, I've been keeping things as quiet as best as I can. But, I intend to visit Sunspear soon, to meet them in person and get the measure of my nephew and my niece. And once there, I can speak with his mother and uncles and begin to plan on making him the Prince of Dragonstone, said Viserys. I agree with you, my prince. Aegon is the one true heir to the Iron Throne. But, I don't see how we can ensure that he takes his rightful place. Not without another war, or worse, another Dance of the Dragons, Jon pointed out. But, you will side with me in ensuring that Aegon will one day be king? Asked Viserys. Jon grabbed his hand and gripped hard. I swear, my prince, that I will do all that I can to make certain that he will be Prince of Dragonstone and that he will one day inherit the crown and the Iron Throne, Jon promised. Viserys smiled gladly that he accepted, but before either could say anything further, there was a knock on the door. Enter, said Jon, just as he let go of Viserys' hand. It was Kylos. My apologies, my Lord Hand. My prince. His Grace, the King, summons you to his solar, announced Kylos. What could this be about? Does he know of what we have been speaking of? Jon glanced at Viserys, who subtly shrugged in confusion. Thank you, Kylos. I shall join the king presently, said Jon before turning to Viserys. We'll continue this later, my prince. Of course, Lord Hand. Thank you for your time, said Viserys before the two left the Tower of the Hand together. Jon walked to Rhaegar's solar, where he saw Ser Barristan standing guard. Ser Barristan. I answer his Grace's summons, said Jon. Of course, Lord Hand, said Ser Barristan before he knocked on the solar door. Your Grace, Lord Hand Connington answers your summons, Ser Barristan announced. Show him in, Ser Barristan, came a reply from Rhaegar, and Ser Barristan opened the door. Jon entered and saw Cersei seated with Rhaegar. What is she doing here? Jon knew that whenever Cersei was with he and Rhaegar in a meeting in Rhaegar's solar, progress was slowed, due to her incompetence and obsession with the idea that House Lannister was superior to all other houses, except for House Targaryen. My king, my queen. How might I be of service? Asked Jon. The queen and I leave for Harrenhal on the morrow, Jon. Whilst we are gone, I would have you rule in my stead until our return, said Rhaegar. Harrenhal. What are they doing there? Why don't I like any of this? Harrenhal, your grace. And when do you think you will return? Asked Jon. As soon as negotiations are concluded between the Iron Throne and the traitors of the North, Rhaegar replied. What? Why is it now that he tells me about this? Has this Lannister bitch been whispering poison in his ears about how to deal with the Northerners? Your Grace, forgive my free tongue, but would the Northerners even come to Harrenhal for such negotiations? Asked Jon. They will. Once they hear of our renewed strength that they cannot hope to match, they will come crawling to us with their tails between their legs like Torrhen Stark had done, said Cersei. I should be going with Rhaegar, my Silver King, not this bitch who cares more for her own power and obsessing over her poisonous eldest son becoming king. If you are certain about this, Your Grace, then I am yours to command. Though, I fear that if Eddard Stark were to come, he may attempt to attack you, if the prophecy you were told is to be believed, said Jon. Fear not, Jon. All precautions have been taken. And the Starks have no friends in House Went or in Harrenhal, said Rhaegar with his beautiful and soothing voice. I will do as you command, Your Grace, said Jon with a bow before he took his leave. If they convince the Starks to bend the knee, then all the better, but if they don't, if they do this badly, then it could mean absolute bloodshed across the entire realm. Chapter 33, A Diplomatic Approach. Chapter text. Eddard 16. 2 weeks after the Magai family had left Winterfell, Eddard was overjoyed when he had received news from Lyanna and Serena that they were both with child. I'm not 40 yet and I am soon to be a grandfather to 3 children, he thought as he wandered around the Great Keep and smiled when he saw Prydain and Arya sparring in the training yard and under the instruction of Sir Roderick. Is all well, my love? He heard a voice behind him. Eddard beamed when he saw Ash join him. They held hands as they looked at their eldest son and youngest daughter sparring. All is fine. Just admiring how Arya has grown into a fine fighter, said Eddard. Yes, she has. Though she has a lot to learn before she can be a match for one of the Mormont girls, commented Ash. True, but with her brother, she is a quick learner, said Eddard, just as Prydain was blocking a series of blows from Arya's twin daggers. I once heard a story from Oberyn when he fought in the fighting pits of Meereen. He told me of a large brute of a man whom fought with twin daggers, which meant not only was he huge and strong, but also fast and deadly with those daggers, Ash commented. That sounds like a hard opponent. But can you imagine a Mormont or an Umber fighting with 2 daggers? Asked Eddard. No, I cannot. The Great Jon is only too happy to cleave at his enemies with his sword Behemoth. As for Mage Mormont, she will continue to batter all of her opponents, either with her mace or her fists, said Ash. Her fists are like a pair of maces, Eddard joked. As they chuckled, Eddard turned around when he noticed Maester Jellimund. Your Grace. A raven has arrived, from King's Landing, he announced, presenting him with the letter. Eddard took the letter and broke the seal, sighing as he opened it. What does this fucking idiot dragon want now? To Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and ruler of the North. Whilst you have replied to all of my letters with uncouth and impertinent replies, I would hope that you see the sense in responding well to this letter. I would invite you, Queen Ashera, Prince Prydain and Princess Talisa to Harrenhal for negotiations on the future of the relationship between the North and the 7 Kingdoms. Myself and Queen Cersei shall be in attendance and I would trust that you would agree to coming. In the interests of preventing another war, which would kill thousands on both sides, I can only be hopeful that you would agree to attending this summit. Yours faithfully. Rhaegar of House Targaryen, first of my name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. What do we do? Eddard took a deep breath as he ran his fingers through his hair as Ash looked troubled as she finished reading the letter. He will make a show of how many armies he has and the sellsword armies his brother and sister have provided him. And his dragons, said Ash. But, with such enormous numbers arrayed against us and with 3 growing dragons, what can we do? Asked Eddard. I will not surrender. I am not Torrhen Stark. None of this was just to humiliate Rhaegar and for personal revenge. This was to save the North from southern machinations and the thrice-damned dishonorable Game of Thrones. We will go to Harrenhal. But, to negotiate, not to swear fealty to him. And Prydain and Talisa will stay here. For there must always be a Stark in Winterfell, said Eddard. And he can call the banners, said Ash. Once we refuse, Rhaegar will use it to declare war, Eddard agreed. Have the Citadel come up with any answers on how we may kill the dragons? Asked Ash. The only viable solutions are that we bring ballista and arm them with weirwood ballista bolts and coat them with heart tree sap, replied Eddard. Do you think such methods have merit? Asked Ash. I don't know. Brandon Snow, bastard brother of the king who knelt, suggested that he could kill the dragons of Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives by using weirwood arrows and coated with heart tree sap, but it is a desperate gamble of the dice. And one that has never been tried before, explained Eddard. Eddard turned down to the practice yard and to Prydain, whom was just relaxing with Arya and had put their weapons away. Prydain. Eddard called. "I, father," asked Prydain. "Join your mother and I in my solar, now," he said sternly. "I, father," replied Prydain. Eddard walked with Ash, Maester Jellimund and Sir Roderick to his solar. Shortly after sitting down, Prydain arrived with Talisa. Seeing them so affectionate towards each other and holding each other's hand, made Eddard smile and reminded him of how he courted Ash and how he would look at Ash as Prydain looked at Talisa. "Be seated," said Eddard. They sat down and Eddard read out the letter sent by fucking Rhaegar. "He cannot truly be serious, father," asked Prydain. "Remember, he has new armies now. In a space of 3 moons, the armies of the Crown Lands have tripled in size and they have 3 growing dragons. And my spies in King's Landing say that these dragons are getting bigger by the week. Every precaution must be taken if we are to ensure peace between the North and the Southerners," said Ash. "You have no intention of surrendering, your grace?" asked Sir Roderick. "No, we will not. But, at the chance of peace, Ashura and I will go to Harrenhal to meet with them. If we can convince them that they will lose many thousands of men trying to take the North and that they would be better served in recognizing our independence, then I would call that a victory, one which would save northern lives," said Eddard. "What would you have of me, father?" asked Prydain dutifully. "You and Talisa will not come. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Now, history has shown that Rhaegar is clearly a man without honor and I could never trust his word. So, I ask that you call the banners as we leave. Tell the bannermen that we have gone to Harrenhal for peace negotiations." "Yes, father," said Prydain before Eddard turned around to Ice, resting on a pair of antlers. "Whilst we are gone, Ice is yours. If things go wrong, I would never allow it to fall into the hands of the fucking Targaryens or Lannisters," said Eddard. "Yes, father," said Prydain. "Gods, I hope that I am making the right decision," Eddard worried. "Will I accompany you, my king?" asked Sir Roderick. "Aye, and with 50 of your best men." "We will leave on the morrow," said Eddard. Eddard left the solar and then started to walk to the Godswood to pray. Prydain 6. Prydain feared for mother and for father as he watched them leave with Sir Roderick and his men. Fucking Targaryens. They've wanted us to bend the knee for less than 20 years now. And even when the North was part of their kingdom, they insulted and disrespected House Stark and the North time and time again. How is it that they are so fucking stupid in realizing how many times they have mocked and insulted us? Even with their armies and their dragons, when will they fucking learn that they cannot conquer the North, no matter their numbers?" "Prydain, my love, we should go," said Talisa. I know," said Prydain as he put his arm around her shoulders and leant down and gently kissed her head. Not even Rhaegar would break guest rights in Harrenhal. If he did, then all of his realm would see him for what he truly is, Talisa assured him. "I hope so." "Come, we should write to the bannermen," said Talisa. "Aye. We should," replied Prydain before they walked together back to the Great Keep and to Father's solar. They wrote letters for the Lords of the North, the Chiefs of the Mountains and of Skagos, the Magners of Beyond the Wall and the Lords of the Neck. It was several hours before they had finished with all of the letters and had sealed them and given them to Maester Jellimund and retired to their chambers. "Do you want to go to the Godswood and pray?" asked Talisa as she held his hands. "No, I already prayed this morning. I just want to see Lyria," he replied. They left to find Lyria with her Aunt Arya and with Old Nan. Old Nan was reading a story to Lyria about father fighting the army of the dead at the Battle of the Frostfangs. And brave King Eddard struck down on the Night King's falcons, again and again and again, until he could see the fear in his blue icy and evil eyes. He pretended to weaken from exhaustion, and as he rose his falcons in the air to cut him down, brave King Eddard sliced across and not only blocked the blow, but sliced across his face and then struck him down, shattering him into millions of tiny pieces. And as he was destroyed, the army of the dead died with him. With just one killing blow, King Eddard saved the world from the long night. Does she always tell such stories? Talisa whispered. Oh, She kept me awake at night with night terrors from the stories of the Whites and White Walkers, Prydain admitted with a grin. Wasn't so amusing when I refused to come out of my chambers for the whole morning. How is our little girl? Asked Prydain. She is fast asleep, said Arya. Not from your stories, I hope. Talisa asked old Nan. Oh, no, princess. Just the sound of this old woman's voice, she said with a toothless smile. Arya stood up as Talisa took hold of Lyria and they walked together to their bedchambers. Have you sent the ravens to the bannermen? Arya asked. Aye, we have, said Prydain. Do you think it will come to war? Asked Arya. Rhaegar would be a fool if he tried, but we have to be ready. The Targaryens want the North to rejoin their bloody realm, said Talisa. If they try, there'll be thousands of southern dead littering the lands from the neck all of the way to King's Landing, Arya said viciously. Nymeria too. Welcome back home, Nymeria, my dear. How did you find it in the north? Asked father. Cold. Very cold, like you said, father. But the Great Keep was as pleasant and as warm as one of the last days of summer in Sunspear, Nymeria replied. And how were the king and queen in the north? He asked. It amazes me how a gruff and rough man like Eddard Stark could ever marry a woman as heavenly beautiful as Ashara Dayne, said Nymeria. Oh, she surprised all of us with that. But, in spite of my attempts to invite her and him to my bed with Ellaria, she very adamantly said no, father admitted with a naughty grin, at which Nymeria could only chuckle. It was as she started to chuckle that she saw her sisters and cousins join them at the entrance gates to the old palace. Nym. Tyen called as she ran toward her. As they hugged, Tyen looked at around her. The north has paled your skin, sister, she said. Perhaps, Tyen, but I was glad to go. To see my cousin and her beautiful little daughter, said Nymeria as her other sisters and cousins all hugged her. Though Arianne did run her hands over Nymeria's ass as she hugged her. Gods, will she ever cease her continuous hunt for men and women to take to bed? What is your cousin like, Nym? Is she beautiful? Asked Rhaenys. I'm no Targaryen, cousin. I don't share my bed with my family. Nymeria replied with a grin whilst they all laughed. But, no, she is beautiful. And her husband, Prince Prydain, he is quite something, said Nymeria with a grin. What do you mean? Arianne eagerly asked. I'll put it this way, if you had all come with me to Winterfell, I think you all would have fought each other over whom would try and seduce him, Nymeria explained. You. That handsome is he? Asked Oberyn. Yes, though honorable and boring, he is seriously handsome and has such beautiful violet eyes. But, he only has eyes for my cousin, said Nymeria. You said that they have a daughter. Will she be queen in the north one day? Asked Rhaenys. Yes, she will. It seems that Ashara Dayne did something right with her husband, Nymeria replied. Given how beautiful her grandmother is and how beautiful her mother is, Lyria Stark will become a legendary beauty when she is of age, and will have suitors from all over the world vying for her hand, and to be king beside her in Winterfell, Nymeria thought as she stood before Uncle Doran, seated on his throne. Welcome home, Nymeria. I trust your journey home was uneventful. It was, thank you, uncle. And I bring greetings from King Eddard and Queen Ashara, replied Nymeria. That is good. So soon before they left for Harrenhal, he said. Harrenhal? What's going on there? And what does that have to do with the king and queen in the north? What's happening in Harrenhal, Uncle Doran? Asked Nymeria as father, Ellaria, Aunt Elia, Aunt Mellario, Egon, Rhaenys and Arianne were the only ones whom were in the Sunspear court. My spies in the capital say that Rhaegar and Cersei have gone to Harrenhal to meet King Eddard and Queen Ashara to negotiate a permanent peace, apparently. Though, knowing Rhaegar and Cersei's lack of honor or respect for custom, I doubt that they wouldn't demand fealty from a sword point, said Uncle Doran. Oh gods! Anything that they do will put Talisa in danger. Talisa and little Lyria. If they dare try to harm my cousin and her beautiful little daughter, I will poison Rhaegar, Cersei and every fucking Lannister in the world with manticore venom. Did Queen Ashara give you a letter, Nymeria? Asked Aunt Elia. Oh gods, the letter. I completely forgot about that. Yes, of course, Aunt Elia. Apologies, I forgot, she said before drawing the letter from her knapsack and passing it to her. What do they say, Elia? Asked father. Aunt Elia nodded as she finished reading it and looked up at the rest of the court. The Northerners agree to our terms, but want to make it absolutely clear that they will never ever bow down to the Iron Throne, no matter who is king, said Aunt Elia. But they rebelled against father's tyranny. That shouldn't be a pretext to hate all of House Targaryen, Aegon said naively. Nymeria turned to her cousin and gave him the facts. Cousin, the Northerners have been perfectly happy in the more than 10 years of independence. There are no loyalists amongst them to House Targaryen. They don't see your father as their king. The only king they will bow to is a Stark. They are their own people in the north and they are far more advanced than any other kingdom. All of that was achieved by House Stark, not House Targaryen, Nymeria explained. Don't be so foolish like your father, Aegon. The Northerners won't surrender like Torrhen Stark had done. They will fight to the bitter and bloody end to stay free of the Targaryens. And on the day that you become king, the Northerners will never accept you as their king, no matter what you offer or promise. Arthur 7. Arthur remembered all of what happened at Harrenhal as he arrived at the Lothston Gate, dressed as a traveling pilgrim. Though it had been many years ever since his exile and his expulsion from the Kingsguard, he was in no doubt that his sworn brothers and men whom he once considered a friend would recognize him. Especially Rhaegar. I may not be the Sword of the Morning anymore, nor does Dawn think me worthy, but I still am no novice with a sword, he thought as he rested his hand on the blade of his sword at his side, concealed by his robes. When last I was here, for the great tourney, Oswell's boyhood home was so filled with life and laughter, he remembered. He remembered dancing briefly with Ashura one night, as she had been dancing all night with knights and lords, and was amused at witnessing the then heir to Winterfell ask Ashura to dance with his younger brother. Arthur wasn't sure of young Eddard Stark at the time, he was shy and quietly spoken, but he was glad that he was far from the ill-intentioned men whom sought more than a dance with his sister. Indeed, he treated her kindly and made her smile genuinely for the first time he had seen in a long time from his sister. And now they return here, to the very place where they first met, Arthur thought as he looked up at a flock of ravens flying around the enormous Kingspire Tower, its stones as black as their feathers. When one sees Harrenhal for the first time, they can see why Oswell is so unimpressed with every castle he sees and compares it to Harrenhal. Asterisk. Why are you going to Harrenhal? Asked Illyria as she, Edric, Arryn, Fëlor and Arthur sat in Arryn's solar in the Starsword Hall. Rhaegar and Cersei will be there for when Ned and Ash visit. I just know that they will attempt to enforce northern fealty at sword point, said Arthur. If you are caught, it will mean your death, said Arryn. I cannot let anything happen to them, especially not Ash, Arthur insisted. Can I go, Uncle Arthur, to help? Eagerly asked Edric. No. It must be me. I cannot risk you, not when you are the future of House Dane. No, Edric. You are the future of our house. You must be here, said Arthur. Arthur, I see that you fear what dark intentions that Rhaegar and Cersei may harbor, but it may be that they just want to peacefully negotiate, said Fëlor. From all of my time in the capital, I know that neither know anything of honor and that they will have nefarious intentions for my good brother and my sister. Perhaps there is a small chance of that. But I cannot allow such a risk to pass by. If any harm comes to them. I may not be a knight in name anymore, but I have never forgotten the vows I swore when I was knighted. Asterisk. As he looked around, he could see the many flags of House Targaryen and House Lannister hanging from the walls and towers, eclipsing those of House Went. Arthur spotted Oswell's favorite tavern there, the Bat's Ale House, and walked towards it, rubbing his hand over his beard. He had trimmed it soon after his encounter with Elia, but on the journey from Starfall to Harrenhal, he had started to grow it again, keen to avoid recognition. Inside, he spotted the innkeeper, the elderly Merryk Rivers, whose large belly and beard shook every time he smiled jovially as he welcomed another guest and poured them a tankard of ale, a mug of mead or a cup of wine. "G'day, my friend. What can I get you this splendid day?" he asked as Arthur sat at the bar. "A cup of Hippocras," he replied before drawing a silver stag from his money pouch. Merryk Rivers took the coin and poured him a cup of Hippocras. "Well, if you don't mind my saying so, you're too hairy and disheveled, rather like myself, than to be one of those in the royal entourage," he commented. "It feels like yesterday when I was one of those in the royal entourage." "What a time to be visiting," Arthur commented. Yes, indeed. I've had more customers and more business with soldiers, knights and even Kingsguard coming here for drinks, he replied heartily. Kingsguard? Gods, what do I do if they come here for drinks? Fuck. Why did I come here for food and lodgings when it's the favorite tavern of Oswell? Pardon me, but could I get some lodgings here? Asked Arthur. Of course, my friend, of course. Now, it will be a silver stag for every night, and that'll cover your food and drinks, said Mayrike. Arthur paid him another silver stag. Good man, you'll enjoy your time here, I'll make sure of it, my friend. Come, I'll show you to your room, he said. Arthur was shown to his room, a small but comfortable-looking room and with a large hearth just in front of the bed. Just as Arthur put his traveling bags on the bed, Mayrike began to light the fire. When it was lit, Mayrike turned to Arthur. Is all to your liking? He asked. It is. My thanks, Arthur replied. Good. Let me know if there is anything else you need, he said before leaving his room. As he left and closed the door, Arthur drew what he held most dearly to him from his robes. In place of the old lady's favor Elia had gifted him before they had been parted, she had given him a new one she had made herself depicting a sword and star and a spear piercing a sun. I love you so much, Elia. If I fall soon in defense of Eddard and Ashura, know that you have made my most recent years some of the happiest in my life. Chapter 34, A Castle Where Lances Have Broken and Where Smiles Have Died. Chapter text. Interlude X, How Game of Thrones characters transformed through the seasons. Cersei Lannister, Lena Headey. My king, my queen, the Starks arrive, said cousin Lancel, Rhaegar's newest squire, at her own insistence. Cersei smirked slightly, for even after 25 years, it still felt glorious for her, the light of the West, to be addressed as the Queen and as Your Grace, as it was always supposed to be. Cersei was the queen to the greatest of all of Westeros kings, for only the greatest of kings deserved to be wed to the greatest of queens and the most beautiful of women. Cersei was raised by father to be the one who would bring House Lannister into the royal fold, and she had accomplished that. She had given birth to 3 beautiful and strong children of House Targaryen and House Lannister. But most of all, it was she whom had ensured that barren and weak Dornish whore Elia was exiled along with her aunts. But even as she felt that all was right in the world, with her place as queen secured and her perfect and brilliant eldest son Jaehaerys as the crown prince, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget the prophecy the witch had told her. Even now, over 20 years ago, it still felt like yesterday that she and Meleia had gone to meet her. You won't wed the prince, you'll wed the king. Yes, queen you shall be, until the wolf comes and takes it all away from you. 5 for him and 3 for you. Gold their hair and their shrouds. And when all is taken from you, the Valonqa shall wrap its hands around your pale white neck and choke the life from you. Fucking Tyrion. He cannot harm me. No, he never will. I am queen and he is all of the way in Casterly Rock. Why can't Jaime see that I am right and that he is the one who killed mother and that he will kill me, father, Jaime and his half Lannister children and take Casterly Rock for himself and intricate himself with my perfect Jaehaerys? They are wrong. Jaehaerys is the perfect prince, the one who will become the greatest of all kings, eclipsing the achievements of his father and all his ancestors put together. His reign will be an unforgotten golden age which all of Westeros shall remember with longing 100 years from now. He is nothing like his mad grandfather. But first, Cersei knew that the northern traitors had to be dealt with for good, if Jaehaerys' future kingdom was to be stable and his hold on it secure. Eddard Stark was fortunate to win the last rebellion, but he cannot win again. No one can outlast the great and godlike houses of the Lannisters of Casterly Rock and the Targaryens of Dragonstone. Cersei held Rhaegar's hand as they left the Hall of 100 Hearths and walked to the courtyard to greet the Stark traitors. We should have had all of the Starks and their traitorous bannermen come to King's Landing. Instead, they insult us, their rulers and their betters, by only coming with 50 men and just Eddard Stark and Ashura Dayne. When she looked at Eddard Stark, she was far from impressed. The witch was wrong, he is not the wolf who would have dared try to take everything away from me. Me. Cersei Lannister, the unifier of the 2 greatest houses in all of the world. Wolves are no match for dragons and lions combined. No, that wolf was his stupid whore of a sister, Lyanna. How could anyone think that Rhaegar could even fall for that stupid wolf whore? But when she saw Ashura Dayne, That was what made Cersei's anger turn to fury. How can anyone think that she is as beautiful as me? I am Cersei Lannister, the light of the West and most beautiful woman in all of the world. I am Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. And what is she? A brainless Dornish whore who married a thick-headed northerner and settled for a grey and barren wasteland when she could have married some other Dornish harlot. Did she convince her idiot of a Stark husband to secede from the south so that she could make herself a queen out of jealousy of me? Both Eddard Stark and Ashera Dayne remained seated on their horses whilst Rhaegar and Cersei stood before them on the steps of the Hall of 100 Hearths. Eddard said Rhaegar, nodding to him. Rhaegar he curtly replied with a hateful glare and showed no intention of climbing down from his horse. How dare you? He is your king and I am your queen. You should be kneeling before us and begging for pardon. I do not see Prydain Stark or Talisa Magai, said Rhaegar, looking around their entourage. And I do not see Jaehaerys, or your new friends from Essos and Slavers Bay or your dragons Aerys Aulus, Rolarion or Carnaxes, snapped Ashera Dayne. They know. And yet they do not surrender and swear fealty. How have the Starks ruled the North for 8,000 years when they are all so stupid? I see you are well aware of current events in our capital. With this in mind, do you intend to see reason? Asked Rhaegar. Finally, the two traitors climbed down from their horses and faced their rightful king and queen. You invited us here for peace negotiations. So let's talk, gruffly replied Eddard Stark. One of Lord Osferthwend's servants gifted them salt and bread, which they quickly accepted. Sir Lyn and Sir Oswyl led the way back to the Hall of 100 Hearths. A high table had been set up for the meeting. Naturally, Rhaegar and Cersei sat at the head, whilst the two traitors sat at the other end. That alone should remind them of their rightful place in the world, and yet they persist in insulting and betraying the Iron Throne. First of all, there will be no swearing any fealty to the Iron Throne from the North or any Northerner, said Eddard Stark the moment he sat down. How dare you insult us so? Your wife said it herself, Eddard Stark, that we have new friends now, and 3 dragons growing fast. Indeed, all 3 have grown as large as a wheelhouse, if not larger. And my brother, sister and I have taken each out for rides. It's quite an indescribable experience, Rhaegar commented. A pity that you cannot share such rare joys and invigorating experiences with all of your children, Rhaegar. I'm sure that Aegon and Rhaenys would have enjoyed to do such a thing with their father, said Ashera Dayne. Were she a mere commoner, I would have had her tongue cut out for that before handing her to a barracks of soldiers, just like what father had done to Tyrion's whore. Eddard Stark looked around the hall and at the door leading back onto the courtyard. Time and time again, you have considered the North to be a land of savages and a horrible land of snow and ice. So, with that in mind, why would you even want the North in your perfect kingdom? To steal the wealth of the North or the ownership of the canal? Or is it just to brag about your power for all of the world to see? There needs to be unity in Westeros. If the North stays apart from the rest of Westeros, then sooner or later, all kingdoms will divide and the realm would be plunged into a state of eternal war. We cannot have that. For there must be peace, Cersei said eloquently. And let me guess, the only ones who can bring such a thing to Westeros is House Targaryen. The house of your good father whom burned people for pleasure. From innocent small folk to a Lord Paramount, asked Ashera Dayne with arms crossed and brows raised. Why are some nobles so keen to protect the interests of the commoners and small folk? Their only purpose in their meaningless lives is to provide for the nobility and the needs of House Lannister and House Targaryen. Elia Martell is a weak woman, with her pathetic charity towards the small folk. That didn't protect her from whoring ways with Arthur Dayne. Nor did that save her or her bastard children's claims. I am disappointed that you did not bring your son and heir and his wife down with you, Lord Stark. We might have arranged a suitable marriage between their daughter and one of my future grandsons from my son Jaehaerys and Margaery Tyrell. And have her ward in King's Landing, said Rhaegar. Jaehaerys shouldn't be marrying that whore of Highgarden. He deserves better than a Tyrell upstart. And none of my future grandchildren deserve to wed into the damned Starks. Was that a threat? Towards my son? My good daughter? And my granddaughter? Eddard Stark asked in a fury which made Cersei shiver and wonder if Rhaegar should have worded that differently. Cersei's fear subsided just as quickly as it came around. Does he think he can scare me? I am daughter of Tywin Lannister and Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Lannisters are never afraid, nor do they ever show fear. You misunderstand. I only want what is best for your house, Rhaegar quickly insisted, no doubt unnerved by Eddard Stark's furious outburst. And to take my granddaughter away from her family and from her home. Ashara Dayne demanded. It's more than you deserve. Your granddaughter would be honored if she was old enough to understand, to wed a prince of House Targaryen and House Lannister. And unfortunately House Tyrell. But there is still time to change Rhaegar's mind and find a more suitable bride. We have heard your threats, and I shall make this clear, one last time, the North will not bow to the Iron Throne. You had your chance to be our king, but you squandered every chance we gave you by insulting us and not coming to our aid against the army of the dead, shouted Eddard Stark. Again, Rhaegar looked slightly unnerved by the extent of the fury of the Lord of Winterfell. Rhaegar sat up and put his hands together and interlaced his fingers as he stared fully at Eddard Stark. I am disappointed. I was hoping that finally you may see reason. You've taken advantage of my generosity and mercy for too long, Eddard. Seize them! Rhaegar shouted. Finally. I've been waiting for this ever since Father wrote to us to suggest it. 20 red cloaks attempted to surround them, but the Lord of Winterfell drew a dagger from his side and stabbed 2 men and slit the throat of a third before drawing a sword from one of those he killed. He grabbed his wife's arm by her sleeve and they ran together towards the door. Fools, Cersei thought, sighing at Stark's stupidity and how pathetic their resistance attempts were. Why delay the inevitable? Did you really think that you stood a chance against the combined might of House Lannister and House Targaryen? Cersei stood up and walked with Rhaegar towards the door. Even from the other side of the door, she could hear sounds of fighting and screaming. Protect the king and queen, shouted a fearsome northern voice from the courtyard. King and queen of the north. Hardly something to be proud of or to fight for. Selyn opened the door for Cersei and she looked out to see Eddard Stark fighting off soldiers and knights of Casterly Rock and King's Landing alongside what was left of his men. A northerner with long white hair, beard and whiskers stood protecting Ashara Dayne, wielding a blooded sword, and killed a King's Landing knight with just one blow as he came running towards him. Lord Commander, said Rhaegar, turning to Sidrold. Yes, your grace, Sidrold replied obediently, needing no further instructions. Sidrold, Selyn, Sir Alisa, Sir Oswell and Sir Barristan drew their swords and walked calmly towards the fighting. What match will they be for Knights of the Kingsguard? Or for Jaime? Cersei wondered as she watched her twin pull off his helm and point his golden sword at Eddard Stark. Cersei watched as Sir Barristan walked toward Ashara Dayne. The northerner protecting her didn't last even a few seconds against Barristan the Bold. But rather than kill him, Barristan Selmy merely disarmed him and knocked him to the ground, and Cersei noticed the pained reluctance on his face as he pointed his sword at Ashara Dayne. Eddard Stark roared in defiant fury as he charged through a line of red cloaks to get to his wife and killed 6 before he came to fight Sidrold. The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and the Lord of Winterfell wounded each other in their duel before the northern traitor was backstabbed in the leg by Jaime. Eddard Stark made no yell or scream as he fell to his knees. At last he bends the knee, Cersei thought with a smirk, though she was annoyed that he wasn't begging for mercy. Arthur, was shouted by Sir Oswell. What? Cersei looked to where the men of Casterly Rock and King's Landing were starting to surround Eddard Stark. Over a dozen men were very swiftly cut down by a bearded man and dressed like a Dornish commoner. Arthur Dayne. You should have stayed in Starfall, pining over your beloved Horelia. I'll make sure to send her your head once this day is done. In spite of no longer being a knight or the Sword of Morning, it was apparent that neither had taken away his incredible abilities with a sword. So incredible in fact, that even Cersei's unstoppable and undefeated twin hesitated and looked afraid to face him as he stabbed and sliced through Lannister and Targaryen soldiers like a farmer cutting wheat with a scythe. Archers, shouted Rhaegar. Arthur Dayne paused as over a dozen archers formed and aimed at him. Soldiers nervously pointed their swords at him in a shield wall formation. Why are you here, Arthur? Rhaegar demanded. To do the right thing in protecting the innocent, something which you would know very little of, Rhaegar, he said with utter contempt before he spat as though just saying Rhaegar's name had left a disgusting taste in his mouth. You should have stayed in Starfall. But, now that you are here, you shall watch as Eddard Stark and your sister are taken to King's Landing. After your sister has been passed around by my soldiers, of course, Rhaegar announced. Yes, a fitting punishment. No. Kill me, Roger. Kill me here and now, but do not do such a thing. Or are you no better than your father after all that he had done to your mother, shouted Arthur Dane. Eddard Stark tried to stand in a hateful fury, but was forced back onto his knees by Sir Jonathan Hoare and Sir Lin. Leave her be, Roger. Just cut off my head and be done with it. Sir Barristan looked as furious as his former sworn brother as he lowered his sword before sheathing it rather than force Ashura Dane onto her knees or pass her to the nearest soldiers. No, Arthur. You will watch this. Roger shouted. Watch this instead, you inbred cunt, was shouted from the Tower of Ghosts. Cersei's eyes opened wide when over 20 soldiers and the archers collapsed to the ground with arrows protruding from their heads and their bellies. And from the front doors of the Tower of Ghosts came charging out a yelling man in blue armor and a blue hood and with a large bastard sword and a large plain blue-colored shield, cutting down 2 knights as he stepped onto the courtyard. Interlude 11, well, hello, Prince Philip. Exploding head, can't believe I didn't notice before. Edmure Tully of Riverrun. Game of Thrones. /The Crown Netflix. Edmure Tully, Tobias Menzies. 23 years I have waited for revenge for you, cat, and for you, father. Family, duty, honor. House Tully will be avenged. Edmure's thoughts were filled with blood-curdling fury as he stepped onto the courtyard, cutting down a shocked knight before blocking a thrust from another, and he easily stabbed him. He looked at where his men had shot at the unprepared archers and soldiers of the Targaryens and Lannisters. When this day is done, the lions and dragons will learn, never ever fucking anger a fish, especially when you step into its waters, Edmure thought as an idiot charged at him with a spear. Edmure glanced the spear aside with his shield before beheading him with Faith. Faith was a bastard sword of Valyrian steel, gifted to House Tully by Eddard Stark after the Treaty of Riverrun. He had covered the handle with black leather straps to prevent any from recognizing the blue and red decorating it and the fish on the crossguard. Appropriate that is now used for the first time against those who have looked down on House Tully and are responsible for the deaths of Tullys. He looked at Arthur Dane as his own men, 12 of Riverrun's best masked similar to the way he was, joined him and started to fight the soldiers and knights. Get the Queen of the North to safety. Edmure shouted as he grabbed a spear and threw it at Barristan Selmy. Barristan the Bold moved out of the spear's way in time as drew his sword, but it gave Edmure all of the time he needed to charge at him, just as he moved aside from the Queen in the north. Edmure sliced and cut down 6 knights as he charged at the storied Knight of the Kingsguard, one whom earned a reputation like no other as a knight of incredible skill, valor and honor in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, just like Uncle Brynden. Edmure swung his shield at Barristan. He sliced across at his shield, trying to knock him off balance. But it did not. Edmure stood ready and cut across with Faith, its point piercing at his breastplate as he tried to cut down on his arm. Edmure blocked the blow with his shield and forced him back. Edmure felt some satisfaction as he saw his breastplate broken from his blow and his nose bleeding from his shield's strike. It felt good when he looked down at his own wounded arm, though he hadn't felt the pain. Edmure watched as Queen Ashura was taken to safety by Arthur Dane, Sir Robin Roger and Sir Desmond Gruel. Get her out of here. Edmure ordered before he swung his sword and shield in a whirling motion at Barristan the Bold. The fourth blow, a simultaneous blow from both shield and Faith, was too strong for even Barristan the Bold, and he fell on his back, his sword broken from Faith striking on it repeatedly. Had I not been using Faith, he would have killed me, Edmure realized as he looked at the knight's broken sword. Edmure turned around to see more knights coming at him, including 2 more Kingsguard knights. He first cut through the household knights, killing 6, cutting off the legs of 4 and cutting off the hands of 3 before coming face to face with the 2 Kingsguard knights. He recognized one as his cousin, Oswell Went, and the other as Lyn Corbray, the knight who replaced Arthur Dane. Lyn Corbray sliced across at Edmure's shield. Edmure merely swung it across, disarming the idiot. I thought the Kingsguard were supposed to be great knights, he asked out loud before sliced his head off. Edmure hatefully turned to his cousin. Where were you, cousin, when they murdered Catelyn? Where were you? Oswell stood ready to face him, not underestimating him like his dead sworn brother had done. But he didn't appear to recognize Edmure's voice. Oswell struck at Faith. Edmure anticipated the blow and it came too nigh, missing his sword but gashing his elbow. Edmure grunted as he held his shield up. You fight well, sir, his cousin commented before he struck again onto his shield. Edmure smashed his shield as hard as he could as the blade was about to strike down. The blow disarmed his cousin of his sword and Edmure kicked him as hard as he could, knocking him down and landing on his back. Edmure knelt down to look him hard in the eyes, taking off his helm. Cousin Oswell looked confused as he threw away his helm. Give thanks to the seven that I am no kinslayer, Edmure whispered angrily before punching him hard on the nose. He let out a surprised scream as the mailed fist hit his nose. That was for her, he muttered again before standing up again. He looked up at the soldiers and knights, forming a protective half-circle with Roriger and Cersei in the middle. Edmure grunted in annoyance when he saw Eddard Stark with them. Give up the king in the north, you inbred lizard cunt. Now! Edmure shouted, pointing Faith at the wolf prey. You will surrender, now, traitor. For daring to take up arms against your king. Roriger shouted in reply. You are no king of mine, wolf prey. You are fucking lost in your own dreams you've not woken from yet. But you'll soon find me and mine nothing but a night terror. Edmure snapped before another knight charged at him with a great sword. Edmure dodged his swipe at him and then sliced across his belly and kicked him down. He stabbed another through his eye as he ran at him with a spear ready to thrust at Edmure. You're outnumbered and outmatched, Blue Hood. Why do you hide under that? Do you hide a face only a mother could love? Asked Jaime Lannister as Edmure drew Faith out of the skull of the spearman. Soldiers and knights of Casterly Rock and King's Landing laughed at his pathetic jape. I've been insulted far worse by better men than you, backstabbing Lannister coward, Edmure simply replied, too tired for pointless arguing with a Lannister who considered this all a jesting matter. He was glad that how Jaime Lannister frowned at being referred to as a backstabbing Lannister coward. Get out of here. Get her to safety. Please, sir, shouted the king in the north. Edmure turned around to see three of his men at his back, two held crossbows and the other held a sword and shield. He turned back around when he heard a familiar voice scream. Eddard Stark took a dead soldier's dagger and sliced down on Roriger. Though wounded, Roriger was carefully taken away whilst the king in the north was dragged and beaten. All eyes were on Roriger, giving Edmure the time he needed. We'll meet again, wolf prey. Edmure shouted before he ran with his men back to the Tower of Ghosts and the secret entrance he had been shown by Uncle Walter when he was a boy and visiting Harrenhal for the first time. Chapter 35, The Knight of the Blue Hood. Chapter text. Ashura 17. Ned. Why is Ned not here? Ashura looked desperately over her shoulder for a sign that Ned was coming with their unexpected rescuer. Ashura learned who they were when she saw the leaping fish sigil on a cloak fastener of one of the men. Tully men. That was the great black fish back there. Before she could ask this of any of the Tully men, as they rode far from Harrenhal, she could see riverboats awaiting them, with several more Tully men standing guard. And standing at the head of them, was a grizzled and hard old knight, whom Ashura immediately recognized as Sir Brynden Tully the Blackfish. So that was his nephew Edmure fighting off Barristan the Bold. Gods, he knows how to fight. For the whole journey from Harrenhal, Ashura, Sir Roderick and the 6 and 10 remaining Stark soldiers had been hard riding away from the castle. Arthur was at the back, making sure that there were no pursuers. Ashura turned her attention back to the Blackfish after turning around once again to see if she could see Ned. Your Grace, said the Blackfish, bowing his head to her and helping her down from her horse. My thanks, Sir Brynden. Thank you, so much for the day's rescue, she said. Our houses have been friends for a long time, and we would not be living up to the honor part of our words if we did not honor that friendship, he replied. A good thing that there are still some who play with honor rather than play the Game of Thrones, Ashura commented. Indeed, Your Grace, he said with a sad smile. Sir Brynden. Ahead, said one of his soldiers, pointing at Arthur, whom was riding alongside 4 other men. One of those men was the man in the blue armor and hood, though most of the blue was gone and replaced with the color red from the blood of the many he had just killed or wounded. He took off the hood as they got closer. Edmure Tully. But, where is Ned? Ashura wondered as she searched for Ned desperately. Lord Tully, where is my husband? She asked. The blooded Lord of Riverrun climbed down from his horse and bowed his head to Ashura. I beg your pardon, Your Grace, but I am sorry to say that I was unable to save him, for they grabbed him after he cut the wolf prey and called for me to get you to safety, he replied. Is the wolf prey dead? Asked the blackfish. I don't know, uncle. It didn't look fatal, but it did look painful. He certainly screamed, so said Edmure Tully. At least that evil bastard felt just a small amount of pain that he is putting me through right now, Ashura tried to console herself with as she feared for what would happen to Ned. Your Grace, we must get you all to safety in Riverrun. And from there, to Winterfell, said the blackfish. Come, Ash. We must get away from here, said Arthur. But without Ned. How can I leave him with those evil bastards in the capital? Arthur grabbed Ashura's hand without a word from her and pulled her onto one of the boats. I'll get them to safety, Edmure. You just remember the plan, said the blackfish. I will, uncle. Don't you worry, said the Lord of Riverrun as he grabbed handfuls of water and started to clean the excess amounts of blood either dripping from his sword, his hands or his face. His squire began helping him remove his armor, only to be half naked and with blood still drenched on his skin. Thoroughly burn all of my armor and my hood, Edmure ordered his squire before he waded into the water. Yes, my lord, said his squire. When did you come to the Riverlands? Ashura asked Arthur as the blackfish led them away. Last week. We heard that you and Ned were going to Harrenhal. But I wanted to go to protect you in case it was a trap, he explained. We should have known better. We should have. And yet Rhaegar just keeps showing that he is a man without honor and can never be trusted. That fucking shit wanted to have me handed around his men. Ashura sat with Arthur, rested her head on his shoulder. He hugged her and whispered, don't worry. Everything will be alright, Ash. How can it be? Ned is Rhaegar's prisoner and the gods only know what horrors they shall do to him, for daring to setting his country and his people free. And now Prydain will have to lead the north to war. Sir Brynden, how is it you had known of what was going to happen? Arthur asked. Well, like you had anticipated, Edmure and I suspected that Rhaegar had less than honorable intentions. For a few years now, we have had spies established in all Riverlands houses, especially in Harrenhal. I came up with the plan, whilst Edmure wanted to be the one who led the counterattack. Which is a shame, I've wanted to bleed Rhaegar and make him suffer, said the blackfish. And where does Lord Edmure go now? Asked Arthur. Officially, he had left Riverrun on the pretense of going to settle yet another dispute between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. He goes now to try and settle matters between them, he explained. Cunning, very cunning, given how many times the Blackwoods and the Brackens come to blows. But should Rhaegar realize that it was indeed Edmure and the men of House Tully behind the counterattack, he will make the Riverlands burn and bleed just as he wishes for the North to suffer. Jaime 9. This went far worse than Father would have wanted it. I can just imagine Father shouting at Cersei and Rhaegar for failing on what should have been an easy task. But now it will be known across the realm that we broke House Went's guest right to capture Eddard Stark and Ashura Dayne and that we were unsuccessful. Have search parties sent far and wide. Find the traitors. Cersei all but screamed at Sir Jacelyn Bywater, captain of House Targaryen's household troops. Yes, your grace. But we don't have enough men for such a task. Many of my men were either wounded or killed in the fighting against the traitors, my queen, said the one-handed knight, whom lost his hand at Moat Cailin but killed several northerners and saved the life of Uncle Tijet with just one hand, for which Father had him knighted and Cersei appointed him to House Targaryen's household troops. Make do, or I'll have your other hand removed before removing your head, Sir Jacelyn, she sculled. I'll send my own men to join with yours, Sir Jacelyn. And you may talk to Lord Went to have his men join with yours, Jaime compromised, seeing Cersei was far too furious to improvise. How did I ever fall for her? Why is that I never saw her for what she really is until she had married Rhaegar? Thank you, my lord. If I may, asked Sir Jacelyn. Yes, yes. Go, said Jaime. Incompetent fool. Why is it I am surrounded by incompetent lickspittles and fools? Cersei demanded. Because all of the competent ones were bold enough to speak out against you and you had them murdered or imprisoned. Father will be disappointed when he hears that they escaped, said Jaime. They haven't escaped. Our men combined with the men of Casterly Rock and of Harrenhal will find these damned traitors. Cersei insisted, as though Jaime was stupid. This Knight of the Blue Hood didn't arrive in Harrenhal yesterday and plan this last night. If he had planned as far as storming the courtyard during the fighting and getting out of Harrenhal through a secret entrance that only the Wents or those whom have lived in Harrenhal know of, then you can be sure he had planned how to escape, Jaime explained. Cersei looked as red as a Lannister flag as she dug her claws into her hands and slammed one of her hands on a windowsill. Damn this fucking blue-hooded knight. Right to the fucking seven hells. I want him to suffer in the black cells for what remains of his pathetic life. Cersei almost screeched. She turned to Jaime as she tried to compose herself. Are you sure you didn't recognize his voice? Cersei demanded. No. Nor his sword. It was a beautiful sword, but it did not look familiar, said Jaime. My queen. The king is ready to see you, said Maester Caratasses of Harrenhal. Cersei followed the Maester, though she didn't look at all concerned or worried for Rhaegar. I remember just how excited and happy she was when she was finally marrying Rhaegar. But now, she doesn't look as ecstatic. She better not turn to me for comfort if he isn't providing her any. Jaime couldn't help but be amused by what had happened. Is Harrenhal cursed to have history repeating itself here? First a war started here when Rhaegar crowned Lyanna Stark his Queen of Love and Beauty. And now another war will start because Rhaegar tried to imprison the king and queen in the north. And back then, King Aerys threw a frenzy when he demanded that the Knight of the Laughing Tree was to be found and identified. And now, the Knight of the Blue Hood outfought dozens of knights and soldiers and had even defeated 2 knights of the Kingsguard, Sir Barristan and Sir Oswell, and killed Sir Lyncorn Bray. A pity I never came to cross blades with him. It is rare that I can fight such a worthy opponent such as he. But Jaime's thoughts of the mysterious knight were interrupted when he saw Lord Osferth went walking to join him, as Jaime stood outside of Rhaegar's chambers and Oswell went standing guard, with a blooded face and battered nose and split lip. Sir Jaime, is the king recovering? He asked angrily. He didn't even bother try and hide his anger. Apparently so, Lord Went. Maester Caratasses thinks so, said Jaime. He hummed and looked angrily at the doors to the chambers. Today was perhaps the greatest insult to my house in all of its history, he muttered. My lord, asked Jaime. Guest rights were offered to the Starks. That meant that they were under my protection in my home. How do you think it will look when word of this spreads around the realm? He snarled. The Northerners started all of this, Lord Went. By refusing to see reason and killing Targaryen men and Lannister men. That is what will be told across the realm, calmly said Jaime. Ha! And who would be so foolish as to believe such tall tales? Thrice my house has been insulted by House Targaryen. First when your king crowned Lyanna Stark just outside on the jousting grounds. The second, when my father's cousin Catelyn was murdered by the Mad King. And now my home is used as a battleground between 3 quarreling houses, after I had given the Starks my hospitality and gave them bread and salt. Neither you nor your king may care for honor, but I care for mine and for that of my house, he replied brusquely before looking scowlingly at his uncle, Oswell, whom hung his head in shame at how the Lord of Harrenhal looked at him. He furiously looked at the door again when they could hear Rhaegar talking to Cersei before turning back to Jaime. Tell the king that as soon as he is well enough to travel, he is to leave. You have all overstayed your welcome. And my men will not help in your search for the blue-hooded knight, he snapped before turning to leave. If war does start, will he side with the Starks? Arthur 8. In spite of arriving safely at Riverrun, Arthur's heart was saddened to see Ashura crying as she just looked out from her chambers in the Great Hall, as though expecting to see Ned riding to Riverrun and back to her. Ash! Come away, begged Arthur. How can I? Rhaegar has Ned, she said through her tears. Arthur hugged his sister and used Elia's favor to wipe her tears. Ash immediately noticed the favor as she started to calm. From Elia, she asked. Yes. We last saw each other 2 moons ago, he replied. You haven't been this naughty since last you were at the Water Gardens, Ashura commented. They chuckled briefly before Ashura looked out again at the horizon. Ash, tomorrow, I'll take you to Winterfell, said Arthur. Suddenly, just saying that awoke something inside his sister. No, I am not going to Winterfell. Not whilst Ned is Rhaegar's prisoner. I must ride to Prydain, she said. You ride to Prydain? Keep safe here, sister, said Arthur as he sat up. What do you mean? Do you return to Starfall? Asked Ashura. "No, I go to King's Landing and to liberate my good brother," said Arthur. Ashura wasn't expecting Arthur to say this. "Brother, half of the Red Keep will recognize you if they see you. And Varys' birds will know who you are the moment that they see you," she said. "Varys isn't the only one with spies. I will write to Oberyn to help," said Arthur. "I also have spies in King's Landing," Brother Ashura reminded him. "But in the Red Keep?" asked Arthur. "Perhaps not. But how will you even get inside?" Ashura admitted. "There's always a way," he replied. "Now, you write to Prydain. But promise me that soon you will return to Winterfell. You are no good to Ned or to your children if you stay in Riverrun. Especially if Varys has spies in Riverrun," Arthur advised. "I will, I promise. But promise me that you will be careful. I cannot lose you too." "And neither can Elia," said Ashura. "I promise," Arthur replied as he thought about Elia. Both Arthur and Ashura walked to the Lord of Riverrun Solar, where they found the renowned warrior, Sir Brynden the Blackfish. Arthur remembered Barristan talk about the Blackfish with admiration for his brave deeds in the War of the Nine Penny Kings. And he knew for a fact that he was the hero of Jaime, whom would eagerly read about the Blackfish when he first was appointed to the Kingsguard. But Arthur was truly astonished at bearing witness to the incredible skill of Edmure Tully and how he beheaded Arthur's replacement in the Kingsguard. "Begging your pardon, Sir Brynden. I would write a letter to my son Prydain," said Ashura. "Of course, your grace," said the Blackfish with a gruff smile. Arthur and Ashura both wrote their letters before passing them on to Riverrun's Maester Vimen. "I may not be a knight anymore, but I will liberate my good brother from whatever hellhole Rhaegar has put him into. What the fuck has become of Rhaegar, that he would threaten my sister in such a way? He undoubtedly remembers what his father would do to his mother, so how could he ever order such a thing for any woman? I cannot believe that this is the same man I once considered one of my best friends." Talisa 6. "My prince, my princess, a raven has arrived from Riverrun, bearing a very urgent message," said Maester Jellimund, whose face was wrought with fear and panic. Talisa and Prydain left Lyria's side and left their chambers, and Maester Jellimund passed the letter to Prydain. Talisa had never seen Prydain so scared or so surprised as he read the letter. "My love, what does it say?" asked Talisa. Prydain stared at the letter, as if ignoring her. "Prydain," she said, this time touching his hand. Finally, he passed the letter to her. "By the gods. Prydain, my beloved son. We should never have trusted that evil bastard Rhaegar. He backstabbed us at Harrenhal, so soon after we accepted the bread and salt of Osferthwent. I managed to escape thanks to the help of your uncle Arthur and the timely intervention of Lord Edmure Tully. I am safe in Riverrun for the time being, but your father is Rhaegar's prisoner in King's Landing as you read this. Gather the armies of the North and assemble at Moat Cailin. Rhaegar may have started this war, but it is the North that will end it. Make them suffer and remind them that the North remembers and that winter is coming. May the gods watch over you and your brothers and sisters." "Mother. What the fuck? What in the seven hells is wrong with you, Rhaegar Targaryen?" Talisa looked up to see Prydain, only to see he was gone. "Where has he gone?" Talisa asked. "To the King's Solar, my princess," said Maester Jellimund. Talisa ran to find the Solar, with Maester Jellimund following closely behind her. "Prydain!" Talisa called. She heard an answer from the Solar, where she could hear him roaring in a long and loud fury. It shook Talisa to hear him be this furious. "Rhaegar Targaryen! I'll fucking destroy you. I'll raise King's Landing to the fucking ground and behead you along with all of your so-called fucking dragons," he roared, his voice sounding like thunder as Talisa shook hearing him shout like so. Talisa entered the Solar and saw him leaning on the wall and crying as he panted. "Prydain! Prydain," she said gently as she walked to him and hugged him tightly. "I'll kill them. I'll fucking slaughter them all," he muttered through his tears. I know you will. But we must do what your mother told us to do. Assemble the armies of the North at Moat Cailin," she said, stroking his face, wet with tears, as she did so. She kissed his face a few times and he finally calmed down and took a few deep breaths as Talisa held his hands. They with Arya and Maester Jellimund wrote letters to all bannermen of the North of what happened at Harrenhal and that the Southerners had imprisoned Eddard. That night, when all letters were sent and Talisa looked out at the night sky from a balcony, watching the ravens fly in all directions of the north. Talisa heard Lyria cooing behind her in her bassinet. Shusha. It's okay, Lyria, my love. It's all right. I'm right here, Talisa whispered as she picked Lyria up and held her gently. How is she? Prydain asked. Talisa turned around to see Prydain joining them. Talisa beamed as she passed Lyria to Prydain. She is well, and happy to be with her father, replied Talisa. Talisa saw how scared Prydain looked as he looked from Talisa to Lyria and then to Winterfell below them. How are you? Talisa asked. I'll be fine. I'm just going to the Godswood to pray now, said Prydain as he passed Lyria back to Talisa. Would you like me to come as well? Asked Talisa. No, it's all right. I need to do this on my own, said Prydain before leaning down and kissing Talisa and then Lyria. Chapter 36, The King of Wolves. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Prydain 7. Fucking Targaryens. Fucking Southerners. I'll slaughter every last one of them I come across for daring to attack the North in such a way. How fucking dare they imprison my father as though he was a criminal. I will bleed them all for father's freedom and for the North's freedom. Prydain's mind was awash with doubts and with fears as he walked to the heart tree. He took a deep breath as he knelt before the carved face and closed his eyes fast shut. Gods of earth, stone, snow, water, air and fire, show me the way. Show me how to save my father and the North from the 7 worshipping twats of the South and protect the first men from those whom would destroy us, our faith in you, and destroy the last bastion of the first men. Prydain waited as he knelt before the heart tree, never needing the help of the gods before like he did now. Will they answer my prayers? What with? The noises of the wind breathing through the leaves and branches was the only sound he could hear, until those sounds were joined by the growling of his stomach. Fuck, I'm thirsty, he thought as he opened his eyes. He looked down at the pool situated below the heart tree. The water looked so fresh, so cool and so clean. Forgive me, gods, but my thirst is far too great, he thought as he saw the reflection of the moon on the pool. He spared a look up at the beautiful night sky and at the full moon. So magnificent, he thought as he looked at the moon before turning his attention back down to the pool. He put both hands in the water and scooped a handful up and drank from what little water he had collected in his hands. But suddenly, instead of quenching his thirst, all he could feel was pain. The pain was unlike anything he had ever felt before as he fell on his side. He tried to scream out for help, but he couldn't even make a noise. Is this my punishment for drinking from a sacred pool below a heart tree? Forgive me, gods. His last thoughts went unfinished as his eyes shut. Awaken. Awaken, my prince, a voice said. Prydain opened his eyes and looked around. He wasn't below the heart tree or near its pool. He wasn't even in the Godswood or at anywhere in Winterfell. He looked around and saw that this was his first time in this unfamiliar place, which looked like a cave. And, he realized that he was as naked as he would be when in bed with Talisa. Where are you? He asked out loud, standing up and trying to find out where the person whom spoke was. Here, said the voice. Prydain turned around to see a feeble old woman standing before him. My prince, she said, bowing before him. Rise, good woman. Where am I? He said. A place that has not seen one of your kind for a long time, my prince, she replied. As he looked at her face, he saw that she was unfamiliar. He had never ever seen her face before and did not know how she could have known who he was. This cave, a long time ago, was the home and sanctuary of your kind, she said, gesturing around the cave. My kind? What is she talking about? What do you mean by my kind? Do you mean Starks? He asked. Starks? No. The last Stark before you to come here was your grandfather. When he was hunting with his friend, Meja Sawin. But no, I do not mean your family when I say your kind. No, you are more than that. You are a werewolf, she replied. What? What the fuck? A werewolf? How many more of old Nan's stories have truth in them? But that's not possible, said Prydain. Ah, but it is. 20 years ago, none in the north thought that the long night was returning or that those south and north of the wall would band together to fight the army of the dead and then fight for the freedom of the north. But they did exactly that. One war they fought whites, White Walkers and the Night King himself. And in the next, they crushed the armies and ships of the south in 3 great battles. So, why is it impossible to believe in the existence of werewolves? She asked. You've yet to show me proof, Prydain pointed out. How do you feel? She asked with her arms crossed. Noticing how his arms felt stiff, he stretched them out and made fists with both hands. But as he did so, he noticed how much larger his arms were. They looked far more muscular than they had ever been before. He looked down at his legs and saw that they were the same, far more muscular. And as he looked at his chest, he was amazed at how hard his abdominal muscles were and that they were far more toned and hardened than they had been before. Previously, his abdominal muscles were in 3 rows of 2. Now, they were in 5 rows of 2. He slapped his hand against them and they felt as hard as steel. Try lifting that rock behind you, with one hand, she said. Prydain turned around to see the only rock she could have been talking about. It was an enormous boulder-like rock.